Good evening, my name is Richard. This is Over and Over and Over Again. This is the live season review, a phone-in show. So if you would like to come on the show and give your thoughts on the season that's just gone, give your thoughts on where you think the club might be heading next season, and also we'll do some votes as well for some awards for the end of the season as well. So if you do want to get involved, you should see a pinned link on the comments. If you click on that, that takes you through to the studio, and you can come on and have your say about how you feel the season went from your perspective. All of this is coming up the other side of this. Over and over and over again. So, season review then. Where do we start, really? I mean, obviously it's been quite a eventful season, shall we say. A smaller season in terms of number of games. We only played 48, I think it was in total, wasn't it, across the three competitions? No Europe, of course, this season. So I wanted to start with probably the quickest bit, which is the positives, really. There has been a few positives, but maybe not as many as we hoped for. Now, for me, the first big positive of the season was the improved atmosphere at the games, particularly at the Emirates, which, as we know, in the whole time we've been there, the atmosphere has not been great generally. But this season, thanks to, partly down to obviously the Ashburton Army and stuff like that, but the atmosphere in the stadium has been really good. And I think part of that's to do with the fact that for the last 18 months or so, we wasn't allowed to go to games, and suddenly this was the first season again, wasn't it, with full stadiums. And I think that played a part. People just wanted to enjoy it. When you get something you really like being taken away from you, you may be more determined to enjoy it, aren't you, when it comes back again. And I feel that's a part of it as well. And I think that's been a real positive. And I think that our form at home in particular has improved this season. Certainly on last season, we still did lose 4 games at home, which is a worry, all to the top 3 as well: Manchester City, Liverpool and Chelsea, plus of course Brighton. So we still need to improve at home, but I do feel as though the improved atmosphere certainly played a big part in our improved form at home throughout the season, actually. So that was a really big positive, and hopefully that will carry on. My worry is that if the team stagnates a little bit over the next 2 or 3 seasons, that's going to start to drop off again, because I think there's still excitement about being back in the stadiums, but I'm not sure how long that will last. We'll have to see. But that was a big positive for me. One of the other positives for the season was probably 1 or 2 of the signings that we made, in particular Takehiro Tomiyasu. I thought proved to be a really, really good signing. There's a lot of criticism on the time we bought him. There was that ridiculous thing on Sky, wasn't there? I didn't know what he was. Is he a right back? Is he a centre back? Didn't matter. He came into the team straight away. Hit the ground running, didn't he? Put in some really good performances. Unfortunately, he did get injured a lot, didn't he, to second half of the season, so we didn't see him as much as we would have liked. But he's going to prove to be a really good signing for £16 million as well. He seems a versatile defender. He had to fill in at centre back a couple of times, but his performances at right back were fantastic. He was definitely up there for me with one of our players of the season. He's certainly the signing of the season for me. But he had some close competition. I thought Martin Ødegaard as well. There was a few eyebrows raised maybe when we did sign him permanently, of course, at the end of the season after his loan. But he settled into the team really well this season. His link-up play with Bukayo Saka in particular has been impressive. And he's added some goals as well. 7 goals he scored this season, which is a decent number. Yes, we need more goals from all the players, really. But, the fact he got 7 this season shows that he can score. Of course, the goal against Everton on the last day was a brilliant finish, wasn't it? And that just shows what he can do. He's been really integral to the way that we play as well. Yes, I was a little bit surprised he was given a captaincy when Lacazette was out of the team. But he proved to be a really good signing as well. £30 million, is a decent outlay for the club, but I feel as though that's been money well spent, and I think he was a good signing as well. So those 2 for me, they were real positives of the season as well. Getting those 2 in, we've got to hope next season that Tomiyasu is going to be fit, because we see how important he is and how much we missed him when he was missing. And sometimes that's the key to how important a player is, how much you miss them when they're not there. Some of the other signings that may be a little bit underwhelmed, I've got to be honest. Ben White has he's been okay, don't get me wrong. He does seem to fit the style of defender that Mikel Arteta wants. He's good with the ball at his feet. He can bring it out of defence. His long-range passing generally is quite good. But at times he was caught out defensively. I felt he got out-muscled a few games as well. And for £50 million, I think maybe we all maybe was expecting maybe a bit more from him. Not that he had a bad season, especially. But what you got to remember is we did buy defensive reinforcements, and we conceded a lot more goals this season, and there's a reason for that. And some people might point to the fact that yes, we had injuries. Kieran Tierney was out for a long time. Tomiyasu, as we said, was out for a long time. But the centre-back pairing of Ben White and Gabriel played most of the season together, and we still conceded a lot more goals than we have done in certainly last season and even the season before, or certainly half of the season before that. So yeah, and I feel as though sometimes defensively Ben White's concentration maybe when he got out-muscled a little bit too easily. So maybe for £50 million for me, he didn't really set the world on fire. I'm sure better things will come from him, and I'm not saying he had a bad season or he's been a bad signing. I just feel as though he didn't really hit the ground running for us, and he needs to improve still, doesn't he? But maybe the price tag's a little bit of that as well. The other signings, I mean, Nuno Tavares and Sambi Lokonga were both bought as backups, wasn't they? Nuno for Kieran Tierney, and yet Arteta didn't want to play him, did he, when Kieran Tierney was injured? Sambi Lokonga as well was, I mean, they even said at the start of the season, Edu said, didn't he was backup for Granit Xhaka, essentially. But even Granit Xhaka, when he was out of the team, Samuel Lokonga didn't really play that much. And at the end of the season, when Partey was injured, Samuel Lokonga didn't get a look in. El Neni got to play. So both of those two signings haven't really worked out. Over 23, 22 million pounds we paid for those two, and it looks like we may have to dip into the transfer market to replace them just a year later. So they haven't really worked out. I wanted to leave the other side until last because I do feel as though there's a little bit of mixed feelings for me. Obviously, goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale. Now, he had a brilliant start, didn't he? He came in, and for the first 3 or 4 months he played, he was brilliant, wasn't he? That game at Leicester, he's up for an award, isn't he, for the performance he produced that day? Was fantastic. But whether or not he started to believe his hype or what it was, I'm not sure. But certainly towards the end of the season, I would say maybe the second half of the season, he's been very, very erratic, very inconsistent. And yes, he still has produced some good saves, but also he's made a lot more and more mistakes as the season's gone on. And the fact that he didn't keep a clean sheet in his last 10, 11 appearances, the only clean sheet we kept at the end of the season was the game that he didn't play against Aston Villa. Now, I feel a little bit sorry for Bernd Leno because the only reason why he's not been playing is because he's not as comfortable, is he, with the ball at his feet. So I think as a shot stopper, he's one of the best in the Premier League. And I think as an overall goalkeeper, he's one of the best in the Premier League. But because of the style that Arteta wants to play it out from the back, we know the problems that Bernd Leno had with that previously. So this was why Aaron Ramsdale was bought. And most of the season, his distribution's been good, although again, towards the end of the season, it's been a little bit erratic as well. But yeah, I just feel as though, is he, as an overall goalkeeper, is he better than Bernd Leno? I'm not sure if he is. He's better with his feet than Bernd Leno, but is he a better overall goalkeeper? I'm not sure. I think Bernd Leno is a much more steady, reliable goalkeeper, and we saw with that performance against Aston Villa that he's good enough to do a job and do it really well. So that's a strange one for me. I can understand why we bought Aaron Ramsdale, and I'm not saying he's been a bad signing. But I feel as though his performances really did drop off quite dramatically in the second half of the season compared to how well he played at the start of the season. And I feel as though that's something that needs to be maybe looked at in the summer. Is he guaranteed to be number one, or is Bernd Leno deserves another chance? Will Bernd Leno stay anyway if he's going to be number two? Again, he played 4 games in the Premier League this season, Bernd Leno, and 3 of those were the first 3 games. He only played 1 more after August. So I think that's going to be an issue that we need to look at. Aaron Ramsdale needs to calm himself down. Quite honestly, he's a good goalkeeper and he had a good season, but he was very erratic for me towards the end in particular, and he needs to just calm down and concentrate on being a decent goalkeeper rather than all the other histrionics that seem to go on around him, which I think maybe distracted him a little bit. I say maybe he's overbelieved his hype a little bit too much as well, perhaps. So that's something that that we need to look at as well. But they were the signings that we made. So overall, wasn't a great transfer window. Even with hindsight, looking back, it wasn't a great transfer window. It was all right. We brought in some decent players, Martin Odegaard and Tomiyasu in particular. Ramsdale and White will be good signings, I'm sure. The other two, Tavares and Lokonga, young players, they may well get better, but it looks as though we're looking at replacing them already. And that's a worry for me when they're players that Arteta wanted to sign. Now, apart from bringing in 6 players, we did actually get rid of 16 throughout the season, including in January, some on loan, some permanently. So the squad depth just disappeared. And we could see how much that cost us, of course, as the season progressed, particularly in the running. You know, was in the running for the top 4 with such a weak squad. We were all worried, weren't we, in January and February? What if we get 2 or 3 key injuries at the same time? We said it on this show. And what happened was we got 2 or 3 key injuries at the same time. We saw how much we struggled. Now, yes, you could say we're unlucky with injuries. And of course, we were unlucky with injuries. But ultimately, that was down to bad planning. You can't have such a thin squad and expect to, even though we were out of all the competitions, and expect to just go through the last, 18, 17 league games with just those same players and expect them not to get injured. I hope they wouldn't get injured. Just bad planning for me. And that's cost us ultimately in the end. And that was a mistake. So January was a disaster. And some of the players we let go out on loan as well could have done a job in the second half of the season for us when we were chasing top 4. People like Guendouzi, I know Torreira's maybe different. Does he want to play for us? Maybe not. But you've got Nelson and Reece Nelson and Ainsley Maitland-Niles are playing tonight against each other in the Europa League final. Surely they could have come in, or is it the Conference League final, whatever it is? Surely they could have come in and done a job in the second half of the season when we were so thin on the ground. Even if they would look at the bench we had in the last 10 and 12 games, a load of kids that never played. We could have had them on the bench. You could have come on if necessary and done a job. And that was bad planning by the club, I thought, in January. So anyway, that's the way it ended up, didn't it? And the transfer business over the season for me was one of the biggest negatives because it left us with far too many gaps in the squad, which ultimately cost us. We have got a guest joining us today already. It's Adam. You obviously everyone will know Adam from the Tuesday Clinic show. Yeah, okay, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I mean, obviously, the plan initially was to get a show with all you guys on that's been on through the season, but it was just impossible to get a night that suited everybody. Just because, I mean, Friday would have actually been the best night, but unfortunately, I'm out on Friday. I've forgotten about that. So I just thought the best way to do it is if anybody's available, want to come on, we can have a chat about the season and do it that way. And it was pointless leave it till next week. The season's finished.
Here I am.
And you're here, which is great. It's great to see you. I mean, what would your main positive be, or main positives be from the season? Because I'm still feeling quite down really about the big opportunity that we had that we were unable to take for various different reasons. But I mean, what sort of positives have you taken from the season overall? Because there has been some.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do think it's been a missed opportunities season-wise, completely missed opportunities, and I don't think that those kind of opportunities will come around. I mean, I'll touch on the stats a little bit and debate, but I suppose the positives for me have been the atmosphere in the ground. Have been a major plus. That's been so much better this year. It's been gradually improving. Since Emery left, it was a bit toxic. Obviously, in the later Wenger years, Emery quickly turned quite toxic. But this season, especially, I think you've got to give credit to the younger players. I think they're the ones who have kind of galvanised the fans. They're the ones that the fans have been able to get behind and believe. And I think the fact that because they are young, they are going to make mistakes. They're not going to be consistent week in, week out. Fans can kind of overlook that as long as they're giving their 100%. And they do. You can't ever, I don't think, doubt. We've had bad performances, but you can never doubt the actual commitment of the players this year, especially the youngsters. So the atmosphere in the stadium has definitely been, a plus for me. At some point, like for a few seasons, I wasn't enjoying going to games, and I was like, and it was getting tedious, it was getting toxic. You're thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But this season, even we've not got the results, I've actually really enjoyed going to games, being at games, and leaving the grounds. Even if the performances haven't been great, the atmosphere has been a lot better. So that's definitely been, I think, the major plus point. You were touching on it there about the signings. I think that it's been very hit and miss, and I think overall as a collective, it's not been great. I think that they've been masked by, like you mentioned, Odegaard and Tomiyasu. I think have been the main two who have been really, really strong. It's a shame Tomiyasu couldn't have been fit the whole season. He could have made a hell of a difference for me.
Wow.
But I think Odegaard has been a plus. I think Odegaard has, for me, probably been our most consistent player. It's just a shame that not everybody's on the same wavelength. But when he's on fire and Saka was on fire, you could see that link up working really, really well. But unfortunately, it maybe only happened a handful of times. But the potential's there, and I think I like about Odegaard is we've now got a player who can link up the play quite well. My main concern with Odegaard is he can't really impose himself on the game when we need to have someone who can impose themselves on the game. That's something that hopefully he can learn. I think he's got the willingness to do it. I've seen him at games when he's tried to do that, but it's just not quite come off. But if he can kind of bring that aspect to his game, get more of an influence when things are not going well, it could be great. But he's definitely been the player I think that's made us sick this year. Link up play, back and forth. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Ramsey in his plump, a little bit, but maybe a little bit more skillful.
Yeah.
That kind of box to box link up play that we've kind of been missing a little bit. So yeah, I'd say the fans and probably his performances on a consistent level for me have been the real plus points. I think, like you briefly mentioned about Ramsdale, I'm happy with him. I do think the second part of the season was not as good as his first half by any stretch, and I think concentration levels seem to dip a little bit. And he seems to be very much a goalkeeper who's confidence goalkeeper. If he's on song and he's confident, he performs very, very well. If things don't go his way, he kind of loses his head a little bit. But again, he's young, especially for a goalkeeper. So, but he's shown his potential. He has shown his potential. And if we kind of, can concentrate on his strengths and maybe help him kind of ease out of those weaknesses and that, then we could have a real star on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to criticise Aaron Ramsdale particularly, but I agree. The second half of the season, and I don't know whether it's a little bit. I kind of felt that in the first half of the season, he was getting so much praise and credit from everywhere because he was playing so well. I mean, that game at Leicester I mentioned, where he got from the wall for it, isn't he, for his performance that day? And I just feel a little bit maybe that a lot of the hype maybe went to his head a little bit, and he started to become very erratic after that. And his performances were, he was playing up to the crowd and he was doing these other stuff, distracting him from his job, which is being a goalkeeper and stopping the ball going in the net. And I don't feel as though he concentrated on that enough in the second half of the season. That may be why his performance is different.
Did you hear the podcast he done with Ben Foster? Did you hear that one?
Yeah.
He said it on there that he struggles to keep his concentration. He even said it himself on that.
Yeah, he
podcast.
did actually. Yeah, you're right.
In many respects, I think that's something that's a good thing that he's aware of it. The fact that he is aware that he struggles with his concentration levels is good, because I know a lot of people who probably don't think they've got concentration issues, and they obviously clearly have. Theo Walcott reminds me of a player who had terrible concentration levels, but at least he's aware of it. You know what I mean? And if he's aware of that, at least you can kind of work on that and do things to work on that. So,
No, yeah. I mean, he did say that, didn't he? Then, and maybe some of this other stuff keeps him focused. He sort of mentioned that, didn't he? Sometimes he has banter with a crowd and stuff because it stops him from falling asleep almost, and maybe he has to do that. But I do feel as though it distracted from his performances a little bit as the season got on.
Yeah,
and I was a little bit disappointed in the way he finished the season. But as I said, we've seen what a quality goalkeeper he is, and I'm sure he'll be good. But I just feel that Bernd Leno is a lot more steady and solid, isn't he? He doesn't get involved in all that other stuff. He's just 100% concentrated and he does his job.
But we're not going to keep him, though, are we? We've got this American keeper coming in. Clearly coming as number two. It's a shame for Leno. I've never really had anything against him. He's a typical German goalkeeper, isn't he? Come in, get the job done. And that's what you want from a keeper. But his distribution levels weren't great. That was his only kind of downside, really. And if that's the way that Arteta wants to play, then you can see why he could bring in another keeper.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was the issue without a shadow of a doubt. And, and I said before, I mean, Ramsdale's much better with his feet than Leno, but I believe Leno's a better overall goalkeeper, probably. But because of the way we want to play, Ramsdale is ahead of him on that basis, isn't he? But he does need to improve his concentration. He does need to improve his consistency next season, right? Along with many other players, let's be honest. He's not the only one, is he, that suffers from inconsistencies throughout the season. And that's probably one of the reasons why we didn't quite get the job done in the end. The inconsistencies of certain players and that lack of depth in the squad, which we saw how much that affected us. You jinxed us on the show talking about injury as well. I mean, us and injuries kind of go together. You can't have a season with Arsenal without getting injuries, can you? Because it's just the way it goes, unfortunately. But yeah,
I think you said about the squad though, like, we did have a lack of depth, but I think one of the criticisms I'd have of Arteta, and I think you have said the same throughout, is that the squad we have, he didn't even really use anyway.
No, he didn't.
And that's my main issue. Yeah, is it because like there's just not the confidence in there? So I think that we definitely overplayed some players this year, and we didn't necessarily need to. I mean, I've seen a lot of people having a go about Lokonga, saying he's not ready, he's not that. He hasn't really been given a fair crack, if you ask
No.
me. And it's unfair to judge him at this stage. I felt that when he came in at the beginning part of the season, he looked good. I thought he looked good, he looked fresh, he had good ideas. But then because he's not playing consistently, when he was coming back into the team, he wasn't having the same impact. But how can you expect him to? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that it's a little bit unfair. I've seen people. I mean, like, obviously Arsenal Twitter is in meltdown no matter what happens. I've been people saying, "Oh, sell him, get rid of him. He's no good." How can you judge him on a season where he's only made like a dozen appearances and maybe only 4 or 5 starts or something? It's ridiculous, and he's only 20. So that's the thing, though. He's had these players at his disposal that he's not really utilising. He's stuck with the same players. To the point where he's actually, even though we've not been in these competitions, they have been burning out. And you can tell that from the performances. Like, he's not been there to freshen it up. I mean, we've discussed it on a Tuesday about, what's the team going to be? Same as last week. As long as there's no injuries, that's going to be the team. Just simple as that, really. And that then is a problem when you do get the injuries, because you've got no one who's got that kind of match fitness or match focus. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. It wasn't. Yes, I mean the squad depth was weak, but ultimately I agree. He played the same 11 players. In fact, he only really tended to make changes, Arteta, when they were forced on him by injuries. He would have persisted with Lacazette until Lacazette got COVID and couldn't play, and then Eddie came in and scored a couple of goals, and then obviously he didn't change it again because he doesn't like changing the team, does he? And he only made changes when he had to, not because he felt the team needed freshening up, or because he wanted to give other players an opportunity, or because he wanted to change tactics for certain opposition. He just played the same 11 every week, unless someone was injured and couldn't play. And then he reluctantly had to change it, didn't he?
The difference from Saka from the beginning, mid part to the latter part of the season. Saka was like burnt out by the end of the season. He played a full season last year, Euros, all the England internationals this year. And he was just tired. People were saying his performances dip. No, he's just tired. He's just been doing so much, and he's only 20. Do you know what I mean? But then it shows to me how much lack of faith he had in people like Pepe. Whereas he could have freshened it up a couple of games, brought Pepe in, rested Saka, but he just wasn't going to do that.
No,
which is terrible, really. Why you got these players?
It was bad. It was bad management of a already weak squad anyway in terms of numbers. You've got to, yes, from January we only had the league to play for. There was no other competitions, but even so, we had a lot of games and a lot of big games that we needed results for. And you can't use the same 11 players. It's impossible. And I think some of the injuries that we got were actually the result of being overplayed. I mean, Saka got away with it. He played. He was fit enough to play all the way through the season. Although how fit he was towards the end, I agree with you. He looked like he had nothing more to give at the end. And it's a shame because hopefully it won't have any long-term effects on his injuries. Because when players overplay, they're more likely to get injuries, aren't they? Later on down the line.
Saka does seem to be able to get over injuries well.
He does.
That's one thing that we've not had with youngsters in the past. We've had youngsters in the past who tend to get these injuries and they stick around. But Saka does seem to have that, capacity to kind of get over these injuries. I hope I just haven't jinxed things by saying that. But, he does. And I'm long that continue. But I think that goes a lot. But, you saw how much he's bulked up, since the Euros last year. He massively bulks up and, the muscles protect your ligaments, protect your bones. So that, for me, is he's thinking of that. I think Martinelli's going the same way because Martinelli obviously had a few injury problems. Now he's bulked up. He's had less injury problems. So there's something in that.
Yeah, let's hope that kind of keeps them fit, really. Loki's in the chat. Evening, he says, evening to you, mate, as well. Robert says, hi, guys. Glad to be back. Had a heart-up checkup. Oh, well, okay, hope you're well. Yesterday, he said, an early call, but they were happy with it. That's good news. I'm glad you're well. He says, hi, Rich and Adam. Terry says, good evening, Richard, Adam, and all in the chat. How you doing, Terry? Thanks for watching. And Loki just made the same point that you just made there. Saka was boxing. Yeah, he was quite clearly. He was dead on his feet at the end. And let's hope he has a good rest in the summer and he can come back sort of stronger next season. We've got another little guest joining us, and it is Neil. How you doing, Neil? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'll only be on for a few minutes because I've got to go for my walk. It's good. Thanks for letting me come on for a little while and just joining in this preview, I guess, or review rather of the season.
Yeah, of the season, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we was kind of talking about some of the positives there. We did maybe go on to a few negatives as well, because it's difficult to separate the two actually for the season when you think about it, because it's been um, a season of mixed up and downs, really, hasn't it? You know, there has been some positives, but there's been some negatives as well. I mean, we've mentioned the atmosphere in the stadium, which I think we all agree has improved massively. The away games as well, I think the atmosphere has been better. One or two of the signings have been really positive as well. Was there any other positives for the season that you can take from it? I mean, I know we're all a little bit down after the Newcastle game and a bit down with missing out on that big opportunity for the top four. But you know, with a few days to reflect, a week or so after that, have you come up with some more positives for the season that you can take from it all? Because there was some, wasn't there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you guys have touched on it, you know, perfectly. I mean, the stadium. I don't want to repeat myself, but the stadium atmosphere has just been a massive boost to us.
Yeah.
I think it's more prominent, just poignant, because it's because of the strife that we've had over the last few seasons with the factions and the fan base. It's been so bad. The one thing we needed to do is unite, no matter what was happening, no matter what each of us thought, or as a group collectively thought of the decisions being made by the board, who the manager was, what signings we were getting and not getting, what deadwood we were keeping. The one thing that we should have done right from the start is at least show unity within the stadium. All right, afterwards there may be debates and discussions and disagreements, but the stadium, you have to get right behind the team. And I think finally we've solved that issue this season. I mean, there were games, as you guys have said in the podcast of late, that even when we've been down and we've not been playing well, the one thing that was consistent was the fans were still getting well behind the team, and that is a tremendous help. Just a quick thing I wanted to is I heard what you were saying about Leno versus Ramsdale, and I completely agree with you. Completely agree with everything that you said. The one thing I think that Ramsdale does offer, which is necessary in my opinion, is the verbals and and his vocality, because I think Leno is very quiet. And you know, the fact that he's able to command his defence and shout and scream, and no matter what, you know, whatever he needs to do, I think that's really, really important. And I think that's something that Leno does lack. So it's like they've both got their pros and cons, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I think, being verbal, being vocal, I think it's very, very important, especially at this high level. And I think that's something that Leno is just a very quiet, more of a how can you say, more of a quiet character. He does his job. He's a very, very good stop shotter. Of course he is. Goes without saying. That one game he came in to fill in, he was almost immaculate, you know, so he can do that. But I just think that Ramsdale has a lot more to offer from more of the positives that he does show. And I think Adam was right. I think he's still only young. He will learn from it. If he recognises that he has a problem with concentration, I think he will definitely learn from it. The surprise for me this season has been, you know, more towards the end of the season, is Elneny. I think we can say he's a positive, because he's come in and he's just got on with doing a job which has been asked of him, and he's done it. You know, he's won a Man of the Match award recently. He started becoming, I think, ever since the African Nations Cup, he's come back and he's been driving a lot more forward. He's not been doing the sideways stuff. He's been a little bit quicker with his reactions and seeing that pass that's needed to maybe facilitate a forward attacking movement. And he's been doing some very good interceptions and things, getting in being at the right place at the right time, especially like, for example, Granit Xhaka's goal against Man U. I mean, it was a great goal, but it was set up by Elneny initially, because he won the ball, and you know, he's been a nice surprise, and I think because of that, he's got a 1-year extension, hasn't he, on his contract? Nketiah, you mentioned. I think you know, I'd definitely written him off, and then you know, he came in and he did probably a little bit a better job than what Lacazette was doing. He scored some important goals for us. But I don't know. I mean, there's some noises now that he's going to stay, whether they're true or not. I'm not one to go on speculation, gossip, and transfers. I'd never believe that a player is staying or going until I actually see it. You know, an official statements made by the website or by Arsenal themselves. But you know, if he is going to stay, then yeah, you know, that's not a bad thing if he's going to carry on in the same vein. My only fear is consistency with him. And he shouldn't be the striker that we've been craving for. We need a power striker. We need someone there that's going to score 20 goals plus per season. That's where we're lacking. We're lacking on the individual goal front. it's all very well having 3 or 4, maybe getting 10s, 9s, 11s, 12s, but we need that one striker, because that's what we've been lacking, guys. We've been lacking goals, and that's cost us so many games. It's one thing that we're trying to repair the defensive side of things, which I think up until the injuries we were doing okay with, and then it all fell apart with Tierney getting injured, Tomiyasu. But I think we need to be scoring those extra goals, and we need a 20+ goal striker, definitely in the squad, and in the first team. In fact, Pepe's been a massive disappointment. Negatives, Pepe, 100%. I mean, there you can look around the pitch and see quite a few, but I expected so many things. I was always keeping the faith with him. I always thought he's going to come good. He's going to get something about him. He's going to come good, but it's just his predictability of his style of play. It's so easy to muffle out. Yeah, there's sometimes where he gets through and he scores a lovely goal, but it's just too fleeting for someone who's a forward, who's a striker. He's definitely been a disappointment. Saka for me is definitely, I'd say, people like Ramsdale, maybe Xhaka, in fact, even. I can't believe I'm saying this, but, they've been consistent. But Saka for me, definitely player of the season, simply because he's played in every game. He's the first English player to do it since Winterburn, isn't it? For quite a long time. So for me, he'd definitely be player of the season. But I just feel that, I know you guys mentioned that he kind of had injuries, and maybe that's kind of like curtailed him a bit. And he does recover well from injuries, totally agree. But my worry is his mental state, because it's also, you can become very tired mentally. And I think him playing so often non-stop, I think he just needs a break. He just needs a break to forget about football and just refresh. But I think he's going to be outstanding for us, and we've got to do everything to keep the likes of him, to keep the likes of Emma Smith-Rowe. Martinelli, I mean, I love the guy. I've lauded him since he joined, and he just needs to score more goals. And I still feel he'll get a better opportunity doing that, playing some more central roles. But I know what you said, Rich, in the past, that you just can't see it happening. And yeah, maybe you're right, but I just feel that there is such a mass of talent within him that just wants to explode, that wants to be released. And I don't know whether Arteta's style or whatever it is, it's just keeping him from doing that. I can only see good things in Martinelli, but I think it's just pressing the right buttons within him to let that come out and flow. But yeah, I mean, I don't know who else. There's you could go throughout the squad. White and Gabriel, I think formed a great partnership. I thought there was a time when Partey and Xhaka formed a great partnership. That's the other positives that I can take from the season.
I think when Partey comes back from the AFCON, he was very good for that kind of 6 to 8 weeks after the AFCON until he got injured. He was brilliant.
Correct. Yeah, so, it's that, we need those partnerships. We need those certain partnerships in key areas around the pitch that will help us, because that's another massive factor for us to be able to progress and eventually get that back into that top four, positions. But if we're going to keep being riddled with injuries and things, that's my worry. Do we need to bring in players that? I mean, how can you know whether a player is going to be injured or not? Look at Partey; he had suffered no injuries before he came to Arsenal, none. So he had a great track record. And when it comes to Arsenal, he's got the Arsenal injury curse, isn't it? It's just, it's crazy. If all our first 11 kept fit for a good part of the season, I think we would have made top 4, 100%. Tierney. He's a great player when he's not injured. Same with Partey, Tomiyasu. Great 3 players when they're on it without suffering from injuries. And then and then we mentioned the fatigue for players like Saka. If we didn't have to contend with any of that, I've got a feeling we would have just got past that position.
But you can't. I mean, no team. Man City, Liverpool. Even they were making changes in the last 10, 15 games of the season. We wasn't able to, because we didn't have players of a required standard to bring in. And that's why they had to play. And we saw that. I mean, yes, Thomas Partey was brilliant, wasn't he, for that time after the AFCON till he got injured. He was absolutely brilliant. And then, of course, he was injured. And, while, you mentioned El Neni, and he came in and did a job. There's no doubt about that. But he's not the same level as Thomas Partey. And you could say that, who would have 2 or 3 players in their squad of that same quality when you can only play one at a time. But ultimately, if you're going to build a quality squad, you need to have players that aren't necessarily playing every game, but when they do play, they're first team players that want to keep their place and are good enough to keep their place when they have to come in and play. And that's what you need to improve your squad, isn't it? And I feel as though we didn't really do that this last summer. We bought players to a lot of them wasn't maybe ready to be first team players, and the ones that were played every week. Ben White, Aaron Ramsdale, and Tommy Asu, who was a first team player as well. So the others were never intended to be first team players. And ultimately, when you buy a player, for me, whoever we buy this summer, we've got to buy them on the assumption that they're going to be first team players. Doesn't mean they're going to be playing every week, but they're first team. You're buying them to improve the first team. You're not buying them just to pad out the squad. Lokonga and Tavares were just padders for the squad. That's all they were. They were never ever going to be first team players. But I don't want to buy players like that. That's not what we need.
I agree with you.
We need to buy players who can be first team players and put pressure on those players in the first team so that Arteta can rotate and say, well, you know what, this player is good enough to come in and do that job as good as this player can, or he certainly deserves the opportunity to. And that's what I want to see us do this summer, regardless of how many players we sign. I don't care. It's not worth us signing 6 or 7 players that are just going to be squad players who just aren't going to be used because they're not quite at that level. Don't bother. Just bring in 3 or 4 that will actually that can put pressure on some of these. Yes, we need goal scorers. There's no doubt about that. You know, when was the last time? I don't know if you two guys can remember. When was the last time we had our top scorer of a season only had 12 goals, as low as 12 goals? When was the last time? I mean, I can't even remember. It's got to have been 30 years ago. Surely it's got to have been, because we've always had a goal scorer, haven't we? Even last season, Pepe was top scorer with 16. I mean, 16 is not a fantastic number, but it's still it's not a great number, but 12 goals for our top scorer. And we was expecting to be in the top 4 when our top scorer is only scoring 12 goals. And he's not even a striker, let's be honest. He's a multi kind of functional player, Bukayo Saka, isn't he? But he's not a striker. He's not. He's a sort of he's not even really a winger for me. I don't know what you would call it. I suppose an inverted winger maybe. But I mean, when was the last time we had our top scorer only had 12 goals? It would have been. Can you remember it? It must have been years.
And now you've got me thinking. I mean, like even going back to the days, going back to the 90s and the 80s, we had Smith, Ian Wright, obviously. They would always score 20 or 30 goals.
Yeah. I can't even. It must have been perhaps early 80s when we'd sold Frank Stapleton and Alan Sunderland was maybe top scorer. He might have maybe scored 12 or 15 or something. But it's got to have been at least 40 years ago. It's got to have been. And that's to me that was a big problem this season. Lacazette played plenty of games. In fact, Lacazette played. He started 23, came on 13 times. What's that? 36 appearances, scored 6 goals. Eddie Nketiah was the only other striker really. He started 13, came on 14. So he played 27. And scored 10 goals. So they scored 16 between them. You know what I mean? Normally we'd have one striker scoring more than that, wouldn't we? You know what I mean?
Shearer and Wright were talking about that, weren't they, on Natural Done, if you saw it? And they were saying that it's, in their day when they won the Golden Boot, you had to score like late 20s to have a chance of getting the Golden Boot. Yeah. Nowadays you can score 18, 19 and get it. So I think they were kind of saying maybe it's the way the game has changed, but still, I believe if you're going to be contending for top 4, if not the title at least, but at least top 4, you have to be scoring late teens minimum, if not 20.
08-09, Van Persie. That was the last one. Quite low. 08-09, Van Persie got 11.
Wow, did he? He was our top scorer of 11, was he? Wow. Yeah. What season was that?
Was it 08-09?
08-09. That have been just after Thierry Henry, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that was. I bet
he was injured as well. I bet he was injured after that season, wasn't he?
Probably, yeah.
He probably would have been. Well, I didn't realise.
But I bet you had more players scoring around that figure as well, because we've never been scoring this low tally of goals before. We've always scored, even wherever we've come in the position of the league, we've always scored quite a few goals.
I didn't realise it was as recent as that, actually, 08-09. So, I mean, I know that's still a long time ago, but it's quite recent, actually. But yeah, under Wenger, I'm really surprised that he was top scorer with that lower number, actually. But I guess it has happened. But the important thing now is that it isn't happening again next season. Next season, our top scorer's got to get 20, 25 goals. Somebody we've already got, whether it's Eddie who plays every week or whether it is, someone's got to get 25 goals for next season, surely. Jesus, if we buy him, he'll be the one, won't he? Perhaps we'll have to see.
You think we'll buy him if Eddie stays? That's the thing.
Well, yeah, if Eddie should, we'll have to see what happens. There's a lot of stuff going on. We've got someone else joining us, actually. It's a new guy to the channel. It's Kai. How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm good, man. Yourselves?
Yeah, we're very well, very well. Good to have you on the show. You okay?
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
No problem at all.
I'll call it from
Rich, I've got to
Ireland.
sign
I'm
off,
a
mate.
big Arsenal fan the last 37 years.
Fantastic, good. We like the older fans as well on this channel, which is good.
Big
We
time.
like it. It's good to have you on board. I mean,
Thanks.
what have you made of the season overall, and what have you made of the sort of where the club are heading or appear to be heading over the last couple of years and going forward? What have you made of it all?
I think we're going backwards. I think that's, to be honest with you, I have no time for Arteta as manager whatsoever. I think he's bringing the club backwards. I know this youth project stuff and all this. And I'm sick listening about young players that are young, inexperienced, tired. As far as I'm concerned, it's all excuses. These guys are all multimillionaires playing football, doing something that they love to do.
Mm.
I don't have any sympathy for a footballer, no matter what age they are. You, me, the lads in the chat here, we all have to get up every single morning, 6 days a week, and go and do normal jobs, getting a few €100, a few £100 sterling for yourselves. Pay mortgages, pay bills, take care of wives, take care of kids, educate your children, all that kind of stuff. I can't turn around and say, "Jeez, lads, I'm a bit tired here." Like, you know what I mean? So I have no sympathy for these fellas. These fellas playing 36, 37 matches. That's what they're getting paid, all the millions of pounds. Saka, for example. People are saying that he's run into the ground and stuff like that. Saka's family will never have to worry financially. So me, you, and the lads here would run ourselves into the ground as well if we were getting that kind of money. I think Arteta is a joke of a manager. I think the club is going backwards. I think 80% of the team that we have is not good enough to challenge for a Premier League title. And I, as a fan of Arsenal Football Club, my standards is to see Arsenal competing to win the Premier League. This fourth business is a heap of nonsense. And Wenger was the one who bought that in. If you get fourth, you get it's like winning a trophy. I want to be competing to win Premier Leagues, not fourth spot. And I see Arsenal fans celebrating that we finished fifth, that it was an overachievement. This is Arsenal Football Club we're talking about. I'm 37 years supporting them. I've seen the 80s. I've seen the 90s. I've seen the great legends of the game, of the club playing. And now all of a sudden, it's an overachievement for fifth place. And they're on about that we can't financially compete. Of course we can. Crankies are billionaires. Didn't Arteta just spend 250 million on the current squad that we have? Therefore, it's his players. And they're not good enough. You have to talk facts, lads. I speak out. I have my own channel and I speak out, and some people like it, other people don't. Both. I just say what I see and what I believe. And I just think, like, I'm going to name out a few players there that I don't think is good enough. Tommy Asu, not good enough. Cedric, Rob Holding, Ben White, Sambi, I know he's a young fella, he's 23 years of age. Says Fabregas was running midfield at 16, 17. Pepe, Eddie Nketiah, El Neni, Lacazette. It's a joke when you think about it. And then I see today that El Neni signs a new contract. Sure, it's a joke, lads. And lads to say he's a squad player. And they did already. He's there 6 years. What has he ever done? What has he ever achieved at Arsenal Football Club? He's not even a squad player. He's not good enough. If for a squad player, if we're in a team, lads, and I come off as a sub, one of you guys come on, you should be as good as me. We haven't got that. Man City has us. Liverpool has us.
Yeah.
We are the third biggest club in England. I think it's time that we start acting like that. And I don't think we are. I think it's a joke what's going on. From the ownership to the board, to the management, to the players, to the fan base. I think it's a disgrace what's going on. It's not the club that I loved. That's my opinion.
I mean, it's difficult to disagree with a lot of what you're saying, actually. And it's kind of, a lot of that's how I've been feeling, because I've been going to Arsenal since the early 1980s. You know, similar to yourself, we've seen all those great teams, and Neil as well. Adam, he's a little bit younger than us slightly, but we've all seen these great Arsenal teams. And even before that, even before I was born, Arsenal were a great club. We won trophies in the 1930s and 1970s. You know, we've always been. You're right, the third biggest club in England, and for some reason, everybody is accepting this what I consider to be mediocrity throughout the club. It was, it was always going to be difficult when Arsene Wenger left because of what he gave us at the beginning. And to replace him and move forward from that was always going to be hard with the stadium moving everything else, right? And it was always going to be a difficult period. But it's almost like the owners don't want us to be successful. What they want is the balance sheet to look good. They're not bothered about making us successful on the pitch because you're right what you say. They're billionaires. Our owners are as rich as Man City's owners or not far off Newcastle's owners. They've got money. They have got money. They just choosing not to spend it on Arsenal, which is their choice. But as fans, we shouldn't be happy with that. We shouldn't accept the fact that we've got a rookie manager who's may well never be good enough to take us to that level. Probably not. We've got, as you rightly said, a lot of players in this squad. If we want to be taken seriously and challenge for trophies, which is what we should be doing as Arsenal, most of these players aren't good enough to do that, are they? You're right, they're not. We've got 3 or 4 exceptionally good players who could develop into something really, really good. We know that some of these younger players are brilliant, but what's around them is not good enough, and we saw that this season. The consistency is not there. They're not good enough when it matters. We didn't have the character to win, to get those results in those last few games that we needed. We didn't. With 3 games to play, we were in 4th place. It was in our hands, and yes, 2 of them were difficult games away from home. But that's when you've got to step up. That's, Tottenham had some difficult games. They had to play us as one of them, and they had to play Burnley, who are fighting for their lives, and they won them games. Fortunately, maybe here and there, but it doesn't matter. They showed that character that we didn't, and they've got more experienced squad. They've got a more experienced manager, and we're sort of going about our business shopping in Lidl. I don't know whether you have Lidl in Ireland, but it's shopping in Lidl, whereas other clubs are shopping in Waitrose or Harrods or wherever it is. Yeah. And until we start looking at doing similar, we're never, ever, people say, oh, it's a process. Well, we'll never catch up because we're not making any moves to catch up. If we want to catch up, what we've got to do is we've got to have one summer we go out and buy 3 or 4 top quality players. And then we can start to say, right, now we're serious. The next window, buy another 2 or 3 top quality players. Then that's a process. A process isn't buying loads of young players every year, getting rid of all the experienced players, the big earners, getting younger players on smaller contracts so we haven't got to pay them as much money. That's not a process. Well, it's a process, but it isn't a process that's going to lead us anywhere other than struggling to get the top 6 every season. And that's where we are. And the fact that people seem, or a percentage of our fan base seem quite happy with that, to me, that's not what we need. We need the fan base to say, actually, no, this isn't acceptable for Arsenal. This process isn't what we need. We need to be at least trying to compete with Liverpool and Manchester City. However far away we are now, Liverpool weren't where they are now 4 or 5 years ago, but they got a proper manager in and they gave him what he needed. And we can do that. We're Arsenal. We can get any manager we like in the world. If we say to them, this is what we want. We want you to take us to where Man City and Liverpool are. We'll give you the money that you need. Any manager will come to Arsenal because we're Arsenal, and they will. But that's not what they want. They're happy with it. They just offered Arteta a new contract because they're happy with this mediocrity because it doesn't cost them as much money. Yeah. And if we can get into Europe every season, struggling into the top 6 just to get in the Europa League, they don't mind that. Bit more money coming in, pays a few bills. Did they really want the Champions League this year? Obviously, they didn't. Looking at January when we were in 4th place, what did they do to help us? All we needed was 2 signings in January just to give us that boost to get us over the line. We would have probably finished 4th. We was only 2 points off anyway with the weak squad that we had. It's just the club do not want us to be competitive at the top end of the league. And for me, and I'm sure you guys as well, as fans of Arsenal, that's not how we see the club. We see the club as a club that should have. I'm not saying we should be winning trophies every season because there's only a few trophies to go around and there's a lot of good teams that are going to win them. But just to say we want to compete with you, we're going to do all that we can to be as good as we can. And even if we're coming 3rd behind Liverpool and Man City, but we're maybe 5-10 points behind them, you can think, well, okay, that's not a bad effort. That's what we want to see. And then we can build on that. More better players might become attracted to the club thinking, you know what, like they did with Liverpool. A lot of players saw what Klopp was doing. Yeah, I'll buy into that. Vlahovic and Bruno Guimaraes both turned Arsenal down in January. Not interested. They're not interested because they know we're not going anywhere, and they know that where they've gone. Bruno at Newcastle, he knows they're a serious club. They're going to be serious now. They're going to they're going to be investing to make them successful. Vlahovic went to Juventus, Champions League club. And this is going to be our problem. I don't think we can attract the top quality players with this manager, with this regime, with this board, and the way that the club are just muddling along. And while the atmosphere has been fantastic in the stadiums, as we mentioned this season, which has been great, unfortunately, that's not going to last forever, because even the younger fans are soon going to start to think, hang on a minute, this is not good enough. Finishing 5th or 6th or 7th, could be 8th next year when Newcastle get their investment. Who knows? I think next year, unless we see what the summer brings, but unless we start seriously making moves in that transfer window next season, we're going to be struggling to get top 6. We will struggle to get top 6 next season.
It's going to be harder.
Man United are going to improve. They've got a new manager. Newcastle. That's 2 more teams. Tottenham under Conte are probably going to get better next season, you'd imagine.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Where does that leave them?
I agree with pretty much everything, Carl. You come out and spoken your mind, and I'm top man. That is a fact. It is what it is. At the end of the day, as much as we might try and cover it with candy or whatever and try and make it look nice, the point is we are a huge club in the grand scheme of things. Not just in England but globally. We are a well-known brand, and we should be really competing for the top honours, not just dwindling behind, which is what's been happening. And I've always said it. I said it in the last podcast. I said, not necessarily a trophy hunter, but we want to see a proper fight. I've said it. I've also said the thing about the players. End of the day, I don't care even if they're in 4 or 5 competitions and they got paid 3 times a week. They are paid an awful lot of money. We can't say to our bosses in our job, sorry, I'm having an off day today. Sorry, mate. You can substitute me and bring on my substitute, and he can do my work today. We can't do that. We'll get sacked. We shouldn't P45. I know, it might be little bit of a silly analogy because we're talking about physical, rather than maybe doing an office job or whatever it is that each of us do. But the point is that is the truth. We can't just not turn up for about 3 months because we're off form from our job. I completely agree with that. And I think the problem is the club lacks ambition. All these owners lack ambition. It's not the club, maybe. It's the owners. The owners are the intrinsic issue here. And if they're happy with just running it as a business and not a football club, we're never going to change. We're never ever going to change unless there's something happens and the ownership is removed. Someone else comes and buys the club, and someone else with a footballing head that wants to completely change things from top to bottom.
We need a David Dein.
I struggled seeing. Yeah, we 100% need a David Dein. David Dein was instrumental in turning us from what we were into what we became, i.e. that season which led to the Invincible era. And it was all down to David Dein. As soon as he left, you could see the change. It was you could see it. It's tangible. It was the beginning of the end of that era, and we've never recovered. If anything, we've been struggling. And you're right. We're now struggling to get to top 6. All right, you mentioned Wenger, Carl, and you said, look, he invented the top 4 as a trophy, but at least with him, we were still getting top 4. Now we can't even. We're fighting to get top 6. It's definitely a massive issue that needs to be addressed. But I just cannot see it with these current owners, and that's what's alarming. Now, all I can say, sorry, Carl, just to before you come in, all I will say is, things are not going to have to change now in the short term. He's been given a new contract to 2025. So we as fans have somehow got to accept that. We can't sit there being negative and think, oh God, Arteta for another whatever. Whether you like him or you don't like him, we've got to accept that. We've got to get behind what they're trying to do. So what I was saying it's in a group earlier today. I say, end of the day, if the board have taken the leap of faith with Arteta, probably because he's cheap, but whatever their reasons are, if they've taken that leap of faith, then Arteta has to repay that leap of faith that the board have shown him by getting in the right players this transfer window. He's given this transfer window. He's got to bring in the right players and make a difference, and then prove that to the fans to show that he is worthy of being the gaffer. And I think that is so important this season. But whether that happens or I do agree with what you said.
You see, my point of view there is that I live in Wexford here in Ireland, so basically I have to drive 2 hours to Dublin Airport, get a flight to Stansted, get the train down, get the tube, go see the game, repeat, back home, all in the one day. So your Sunday, you're pretty bollocks on the Sunday. But I went over to do that to stand in the North Bank of Highbury. Many occasions. I was there the last game ever played in Highbury as well. And I saw that beautiful stadium smashed down. And I was promised that we go to the Emirates to compete with the best clubs in European football. We can't even compete with Spurs. It's a joke. Then on Sunday, they went out with their new strip for next season. But what about the strip that they had on the Sunday and the Monday and the Saturday before that, or the Thursday and the Sunday before that, against Spurs and Newcastle? They weren't fit to wear the strip. But yet they were fit to wear this new merchandise on the last game of the season. It's a joke. It's a farce. And the fans goes out and pays the big money, and they're all going around with the new jersey. The cannon is even facing the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's an embarrassment. It's a joke. Since we went to the Emirates, our club never been the same since. And I don't care that I can only see next season being worse. I don't think we're even going to finish in the top 8 next season. That's how bad I think things are. And you're on about to transfer this summer. They're starting off by giving Nenny a new contract. So what's that telling you straight away? That Nenny is in the midfield? Shaka came out the other day saying, oh, we're going to be a fan. We're going to stick together. I'd like to see us progressing. That means that fella is going to be there next season. And he's an absolute joke of a player. Possibly the worst player I ever saw at the club. Then you have Partey, who on his day can be brilliant, but he's injured half the time. And then you have Sambi, who in my opinion is useless. Then you're talking about Telemann. Telemann's is now coming to Arsenal. Everybody wants to wake up to that. He's now coming nowhere near Arsenal. Then they're on about Eddie Nketiah signing the new contract and giving him the number 14 jersey, Thierry Henry jersey. Eddie Nketiah. That's the standard stair, lads, of this club in one sentence. It's an embarrassment. So I don't see any big signings coming around about JSO. Really. If you were a top European player, would you want to come to Arsenal? Because I wouldn't. I don't know, lads. I don't really know. I'm hurting big time because this is a repeat. I'm seeing this every single year. It's like we're on a roundabout. It doesn't matter who the manager is. Arteta, Emery. Emery finished one season, 5th, and the European Europa League. I know we never showed up for that, but he got sacked. This fella that we have now is almost here 3 years. 8th and 5th, and 1 year out of Europe altogether, and that's acceptable. And the fans down in on tables singing this new song about Arteta. We have Arteta. We have. Give us a break, lads. Give us a break. Are you actually Arsenal fans? Do you actually understand the history, the tradition, what the crest meant, what Highbury meant? Because I don't think these fools do. I don't know what else. We have a delusional fan base. I'm at the calling a few lads out there. I want to do a show with them. Just ask him seriously, like a few fellas off AFTV, Julian. I caught him out. What's wrong with these people? They're just delusional. Because our club, lads, you see, here's my biggest concern. That we will end up like a West Ham United. Mid-table club, just lingering mid-table, year in, year out, year in, year out. And then we'll be forgotten about as the once great, mighty Arsenal. And I can see that happening, lads, because I don't see any progression. And I don't see us fighting for any league titles or any European championships. These are facts. It's plain and simple facts. But according to some of the fan base, we're progressing. We're doing very well. We want to be proud. Proud of what? Proud of what? That's what I have to say, lads.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And that, to me, that's one of the biggest problems. I get the feeling that a lot of people seem to think that it's a popular opinion to get behind Arteta, to sing that stupid song that you mentioned, right? And without actually, because if you say anything against that, everybody jumps on you. Oh, you're negative, you're this. No, sorry, we're Arsenal, right? And Arsenal is not about muddling along trying to finish 5th. Or trying to finish 6th. That's not Arsenal. That might be the Arsenal that you want. And if that's the Arsenal that you want, then you're welcome to it. I want the Arsenal that I know we're capable of being, which is the Arsenal that we've been in the past. And you're right. We moved from Highbury, and they promised us this, that, and the other, didn't they? And yes, it's different people involved now. Things have changed. David Dean was still there then. And I believe, actually, that at that time, they actually wanted and they believed that we would go on and be even more successful by moving. I think they believed that. The people at the time, at the club at the time, we still had the Hillwoods was still there. And I think they all believed that we would go on and have bigger success by moving to the Emirates, right? I believe that's what they actually really believed that, right? Unfortunately, things changed very quickly. A year later, David Dean leaves. Man City suddenly get their money, became even harder to compete. We had to pay off the stadium, and suddenly we're in a situation where it all crashed down really quickly. And Arsene Wenger kept us in the top four that isn't a trophy, as we know, but at least he managed to keep the money rolling in the Champions League money every year. He kept doing that. Now, maybe as much as I loved what Arsene Wenger did, and as much as I didn't like all the criticism he got at the end and all the Wenger out and the helicopters and all this kind of stuff flying over the stadium, I didn't agree with any of that, right? It would have been better for the club if he had left maybe 6 or 7 years earlier, because if we'd gone through what we're going through now, not even being in Europe 6 or 7, 8, 10 years ago, we wouldn't be in this mess now because we'd have sorted it out. But we're going to have to go through that process now of being, like you said, I maybe look at us a bit more like an Everton than a West Ham, because Everton used to be a successful club and now they've been run to the ground. And that's similar. I see us following a similar path if we're not careful. And maybe this might kickstart things. If we spend another 3 or 4 years struggling away, not being in Europe sometimes, as we haven't been now, if we're not in Europe again after next season, then the club are going to have to start rethinking what they're doing. And they're going to have to then start maybe, if they're talking about a rebuild isn't bringing a load of kids in. A rebuild is actually rebuilding it so it's stronger and better, and it's going to take us forward. And that's maybe we need to reach the bottom, if you like, before we can come up again. And maybe we've just been ticking along for too long, haven't we? We've been ticking along for 10 years or more, haven't we? Just ticking along, top four, Champions League money, lovely job, and that's it. And not showing any ambition to compete. I think Arsene Wenger was actually quite frustrated at the end, because we wasn't far off being able to compete, was we? A few years ago, we had when we had Van Persie in the team, players like that, Fabregas. We had some good players, and a couple more decent additions. We could have challenged. We could have won the league title at that time. I think we could have done. But the club didn't show that ambition, did they? We didn't make that investment. We were paying off the ground, maybe. And by the time we had a bit more money, when the Mesut Ozil thing came around, Alexis Sanchez, when we actually spent some money on players, it was too late. And it wasn't enough. When we bought Ozil, what we should have done was the year after we bought Sanchez, but then we should have been buying 3 or 4 other players of that quality. Then we could have really pushed on, but we didn't. And we can't do it now because we're too far behind. We need we need 3 or 4 of those players every window for the next 3 or 4 windows to get anywhere near Man City and Liverpool. Is that going to happen as things stand at this club? No. Is it going to happen while everybody's saying Arteta's this fantastic manager when he's done nothing? He's proved nothing in his career as a manager. He's 40 years old. He's been a manager of us for 3 years, right? 37 he was when he took over at Arsenal. He's a kid in the job. Never been a manager before, and we're suddenly expecting him to be able to compete with Klopp, to be able to compete with Pep, to be able to compete with Conte, to be able to compete with Tuchel. Do you know what I mean? Now Ten Hag's come into the Premier League. We've got he's got no chance of competing with him, no matter how much money they give him, because he's not good enough. He's not a good enough manager yet. He may be in 10 years' time, and in 10 years' time we can come back and take us and win us the league, but he's not going to do anything until then because he's not good enough. Even David Moyes is a better manager than him. Eddie Howe is a better manager than him. There's so many managers in the Premier League that are better than Arteta. And people say, "Oh, well, we finished 5th. He must be the 5th best manager." Well, no, that's not really the case, is it? Let's be honest. He's not the 5th best manager. He's the 8th best manager the 2 seasons before. He hasn't suddenly become the 5th best manager, has he? In 1 season, he still lost 13 games. Let's remember, we lost 13 games this season in the Premier League. 13, 1/3 of our games. We lost 13 games last season. Is that an improvement? I'm sorry, it's not. We turned a couple of draws into wins. That's all we've done. We've scored pretty much the same number of goals, conceded a lot more, despite buying all those defenders and a new goalkeeper. We conceded 9 more goals. But what progress? I just don't see it. I do not see progress.
There is none. I'm sick listening about progress. There is none. I was here. I went over to the local pub to watch the Newcastle game with a few Arsenal mates of mine, and they're delusional, and it caused me negative. And at the end of the game, they're saying, "Oh, sure, there's progression." I said, "Where's the progression?" We're after getting beaten in the same amount of games. We've conceded more goals this season than we did last season, and that was with David Luiz and Bellerin and all them fellas. And this is all under Arteta's defence. It's an interesting point. I actually know a fellow over there at the club there, and he was able to tell me that certain players have said that they're actually confused about Arteta's direction. Now, I found it interesting when I was told that, because if you see Arteta on the touchline, his hands are going all over the place, like he's directing the airplanes or something.
Yeah.
And Thomas Partey actually ran over in one game, and he was like to Arteta, "What are you trying to tell me?" He was actually confused. You could see it in his face. He was confused. That's not a good manager. Good manager is communication, clear, crystal, concise. You know what you're doing. I don't see it, lads. I don't see it at the club. I don't know what it is, but the fan base needs to wake up, and hopefully this season will show the world that what Arteta really is, and he get the sack. Because
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. I don't think it'll happen, even if we finish 8th next season or worse.
I agree.
Because he didn't get sacked when we finished 8th last season. And he's not going to get sacked if we finish 8th again next season, is he?
No.
I mean, and unless we were maybe struggling in the bottom 5 or 6 in the second half of the season, there might be pressure then. But even then, he looks like he's got one of the safest jobs in the Premier League. It's almost like he doesn't need to be successful, because he hasn't been successful. Yes, he won the FA Cup. He deserves credit for that. Aubameyang basically won him that, didn't he? Those semi-final and final with the goals in. But Arteta did win us an FA Cup, which is more than some managers have won in the last few years, which is fine. But what you've got to do, what he had to do was build on that success. He didn't. He got rid of every single player that played. How many players who played in that cup final in 2020 are still at the club now?
Exactly.
Maybe 3 or 4.
3, I'd say.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, Saka didn't even play in that cup final. He was an unused substitute on the bench. ESR didn't play because I think he might have been injured, but he wouldn't have played anyway, I don't think, in that cup final. Martinez was in goal, wasn't he? And he's gone.
He's gone.
Did Socrates play, didn't he? Because someone was injured. He came in and played, didn't he? He's gone. Obviously, Aubameyang scored the 2 goals. He's gone. Bellerin played. He's gone. Tierney, maybe. He's still there. I think Tierney played, didn't he? Yeah. He'd be one of the only ones. He'd be one of the only. Who was in midfield that day? Oh, Xhaka probably played, actually. So Xhaka's still there.
Xhaka, because he plays in every game.
Yeah.
He's like the Terminator. He never gets injured.
No, he doesn't hardly ever know. He doesn't. 250 games he's played, hasn't he? So we know he never gets injured.
Yeah. What's your opinion about Xhaka, mate? I'd like to get your opinion.
I don't mind him. I think that since he's been at the club, we've gone from being regular Champions League to not. Now, that's not down to him. That's down to not just down to him. It's down to the team around him. And you can see that with these young players, I think he's been really important, because I think he's a natural leader. And you can see that on the pitch. Is he a fantastic football player? No, he's not. Can he do a job? Yes, he can. Is he the player to take us forward to the next level to challenge for the league? No, he's not. That's obvious. But with what we've got, he's an important player. But he shouldn't be an important player, because we should have better players to become that important player. He's become really important to this team because of the lack of quality and experience around him. Yeah. And that's got worse and worse the longer he's been at the club, because all the experience has been ripped away. Yeah. So now he's massively important. He has to start every game. He should be captain, quite honestly, because he's the only player that we've got that's an experienced player, isn't he? All the rest of them in that team, they're all kids. He put Martin Odegaard as captain, 22 years old. Yes, Tony Adams was captain at 21, but Tony Adams was Tony Adams. He was a leader of men. Martin Odegaard is a nice footballer, but is he a leader of men? No, he's not. Is he a captain for Arsenal? No, he's not. Not at this point in time. None of them are, except possibly Xhaka. So he's important to this team. But obviously, along with a lot of the other players that we've mentioned, if we want to compete for titles, if we want to be taken seriously, we need upgrades on so many players in this team. And Xhaka, unfortunately, as much as I like Granit Xhaka, I think at least he shows passion, doesn't he? The interview he gave after Newcastle, fair play to him, loved it. If more players felt like that, we wouldn't capitulate in the way that we did. But that is a lack of experience, and that's down to the direction that the club want to go in. But yeah, we need better players. definitely than Granit Xhaka. We need better players than Rob Holding. We need better players than El Neni. We need better players than Nketiah, who we've just offered new contracts to. I mean, if we're offering contracts to Arteta, we're offering contracts to El Neni, and we're offering contracts to Nketiah. That to me is the epitome of what's wrong with this club, accepting that averageness of players and manager. That no one's going to take us. No one cares about Arsenal. Man City aren't worried about us. Liverpool aren't worried about us. Chelsea aren't worried about us. Even Tottenham. You said it yourself. Tottenham aren't worried about us anymore because this is what we're building our team around Arteta, El Neni, and Nketiah. Not looking at getting better. Not looking at improving. Just keeping them here. Oh, well, El Neni's had about 5 good games. We'll offer him a new contract. Nketiah scored a few goals. We'll offer him a new contract. Arteta's done slightly better than last season. He took us back to where we started from, but he's done slightly better than last season. We'll offer him a new contract. We'll get rid of Aubameyang, despite the fact he won a Golden Boot 2 years ago, won at the FA Cup with his goals. We'll get rid of him because Arteta doesn't really like him. You know what I mean? This is where we are. This is where we are. And people are like, oh no, he's brilliant. Oh, this is brilliant. I'm loving it. Why are you loving it? Because the fans sing a few songs in the ground and it's a little bit more fun to go to the games. I don't care about that. Yes, it's nice at the time, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make us a better team. It doesn't make us compete against Man City. It doesn't make us not lose 13 games in a season because the fans are singing songs in the ground. Doesn't mean anything, really. It just means going to the games is slightly better than it was 2 or 3 years ago, and we were exactly the same on the pitch, but it was a little bit worse atmosphere in the ground. That's all that's happened. We've not improved. We're not better. It's just a better experience of going to the games, but that doesn't mean anything, does it? It doesn't make you a good team. It doesn't make you compete. It doesn't win your trophies. It's just all a load of nonsense, really. And unfortunately, that's the only positive that there's been this season, really, is the atmosphere in the ground. That's it. And what does that mean? What's that going to get us? Nowhere.
Okay, nothing.
Do you know what I mean?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
What's your opinion, buddy?
On who? Xhaka?
Yeah, Xhaka. Yeah. And
I think I'm pretty much in the same vein as what Richard was saying. I mean, I when he had his sissy fit and he did what he did, throwing the armband on the floor and chucking his shirt out, I wanted him out of the club. I was so livid. I was really livid, and I thought, how that guy could never ever play in an Arsenal shirt again after that behaviour. Just putting aside his performances as a player, just that behaviour for me. And he was wasn't he captain? Yeah, he was captain, wasn't he? So end of the day, you just think, no, you can't be part of this club. That's not you're not representing at all. I'm old school. I look at the likes of Tony Adams, and for me, he's still up there. It's probably one of my top 3 favourite all-time players at the club, because he meant so. He wasn't just about him being a player. It was his whole attitude as a footballing captain and how he used to command his troops and command his players. And we've never ever been able to replace neither him or Vieira ever. We have never had that replacement. And no one really has come in and been able to fit into that criteria, and that's what we're seriously lacking. I've mentioned the board, which needs to be changed. We can talk about Arteta all day. We can talk about this and that, but we've never had any true leadership on the pitch. So Xhaka for me, but I have to give him a bit of credit, Carl, because I think, for a player to have gone right down that deep end and then to come out, I think what Rich is saying, he's probably the best of a bad bunch in terms of consistency that we've got in the midfield. I mean, if he wasn't there, I have seen games where he's not featured, and we've actually done worse, been even worse than we have been. So I think he has kind of been a little bit of that cement and that glue that we needed in the midfield. And as we mentioned earlier, I think before you came on, when Partey was fit and playing well, I think he was teaming up very well with Xhaka, to be fair. And we were commanding the midfield in those games. And I think we were doing a lot better. But then also because we had a fully fit back 4, which was consistent at the time, before we lost Tierney and Tomiyasu, that was also helping them. So it was working like a proper machine at that time. And we were having those good results. But that's the problem. This is a negative of the season, of the 21-22 season. The fact that we did not reinforce or do anything in January has cost us big as well, because Rich said it. He said, there's no point having 11 players and then when 3 or 4 go out, that's the end. You've got to bring in replacements that can do just as good. And like what you said, you can't, we need to have like for like. And we missed the trick in January. And I think that's a negative. Can I just I know it's been really bad over the last few minutes. Can I just say one slight positive, which maybe you will or will not agree with. I think Odegaard, no matter what people say, I think he has been one of the players when he's firing and doing well. He is a sublime player, and he can be the link for creativity, link the back to the front, something that we were seriously missing at one point. Ever since we lost Santi Cazorla, we never had that real creative player. And I think when he's on form, he's sublime for me. And I think from a positive point of view, all I want to say is I think to get him for 29 million, I think for this day and age, that price is a bargain. I really do. And if he can play and he can come back, when I saw when he plays coming into going back into the back of the park and retrieving the ball and doing all of that legwork, I think he's great. But then where he's been bad is the games we've truly needed him, he's just gone missing. And I don't know whether that's because of the way the players have been set up, whether it's his fault or not. It's those games where we truly need him. And if he can overcome that part and repair that frailty in his game, I think he would be a tremendous player going forward. Honestly, I really do believe that. You may not agree, but I can see good things in Odegaard from that perspective. You see when it didn't really matter, and we played a lot freer against Everton the last game of the season. You know, he was featuring a lot more again. He was back to his Odegaard good self. The games we needed him, Newcastle and Tottenham, he disappeared. So that's the problem. You've got to be
a mentality issue, isn't it? It's a mentality issue.
Yeah, it is a mentality issue. It is a mentality issue.
Which is through the whole club. It's through the whole club, isn't it? It's that loser mentality, I call it.
It's a poison. It's a poison. And I'm going to say again, for me, that is coming from the board because they have no ambition. If you have no ambition as a board and you just want to run the club as a business, you have got no hope in hell. We're not going to see the Arsenal of the glory days. You know, and I can't see this blooming owner going anywhere. That is my fear. You know, it doesn't matter how much money he's given, what players he brings in. If the board are satisfied with just tipping over and being a cash cow investment for themselves, we are never going to progress, for me. And that's, you know, you can't just keep blaming the players and the manager and stuff. The board have got to be doing something, whether they become, I don't know, passive owners and they bring in refresh the whole board, all full of football men, and then allow them to make the intrinsic decisions. If they don't want to give up ownership of the club, that is, because I can't see it happening. Do that then. Do that and let that. I don't want Josh Kroenke coming up and talking his shit twice a season, saying we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. I want to see a proper footballing man there. I want to see a proper footballing man there and saying, right, this is what we're doing. And, you know, start investing properly in decent players that will make differences on the pitch and that will completely change the mentality going forward. And that's how I see it. But
you see, for me, it's like there's a cancer in the club from the ownership the whole way down to the tea lady.
Yeah.
And there's one thing seriously lacking in Arsenal Football Club for years and years, and I call it the winning mentality. There is no winning mentality. No. It's a joke in every sport, professional sport, not even professional. Even for me, if I'm playing a 5-a-side game, I want to win that game tonight.
Yeah.
These lads are professionals, millionaires, fighting for the base honours in world football, and they haven't got the winning mentality. Now, you talk about Odegaard. To me, Odegaard is the same. No winning mentality. He can be brilliant, like the other day against Everton, but when it really matters, he's missing. And what really gets to me is he's missing wearing the captain band. Now, the thing about Odegaard for me, there's so much side passing and back passing for a creative player for me. Now, I don't think it's his fault. I think it's because he doesn't have a proper striker to play off him. That's because let's face facts. Like I said, Nettie and Kitty are like two statues. Do you know what I mean? So I think if there was a J.S. Lewis or a caliber of a player like him, and not saying now that J.S. Lewis is a great player, and he's a good player, he'd be better than what we have. But I think Odegaard would actually become a better player if he had someone that could do the run off, you know what I mean? Run off the shoulder. He'd be able to pass, good passes and stuff like that. So the jury is still out on Odegaard. But I will give him this season. And it depends again on who Arteta is going to bring into the club. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think Eddie Nketiah could be the front runner for Arsenal, lads, for this season.
I'm worried about that. I'm worried
I'm
about
very
that.
worried about that.
I'm
I am
really
now.
concerned.
What I've been seeing today,
Yeah.
I'm really worried that that's going to be the issue. I'm really
If
worried.
that's the case,
I like
Forget
I
about
like this comment here from Loki. He says the last time I was less hopeful, we had Ray Hankin up front and George Wood in goal. Yeah, I mean I can remember those days, and yeah, that was. You know, I was young then, so I didn't really care because I hadn't experienced too much at Arsenal. I hadn't seen us win loads of trophies, win anything, so it didn't really matter too much. We were muddling along mid-table, no one cared. But now it's different, isn't it? Because we know what Arsenal are capable of doing, and yeah, my worry now is you're right about Eddie. I think after the news today, that I'm worried that are we gonna? I mean. We're not going to buy another striker. Is this it now? Or are we going to buy a striker as well and get rid of Lacazette? So we'll have a new striker and Eddie as our two strikers, which to me will be almost exactly the same position. Yes,
we need two new strikers. We need two new good strikers.
Right. I just want to interrupt you there for a minute. I don't know if you've seen this. I just got it. I was working there, just finished up work there, and I just threw you guys on there and I said I joined the party. But before I did, I just saw a headline breaking news that we're on about getting Tammy Abraham from Roma for 67 million. Did you see that news?
No, I haven't seen that news. No.
A few minutes ago, there I heard about it. There now it could be, you know, we're linked to everyone. Like we're always linked.
I don't take it.
Abraham talking about Abraham. I don't want to spend 67 million on that waster. No way.
No, see, it's difficult, isn't it? Because what top quality striker is going to want to come to Arsenal as things stand at the moment? This is a question of Vlahovic didn't want to come, did he? You know, and even he's not an elite striker, is he? He's a decent striker, but he's not a top elite striker, and he didn't want to come. You know, and maybe Abraham is the best that we can attract. And if it is, then that's a big problem, isn't it? I mean, Abraham would probably score us goals, Tammy Abraham. He scored goals at Chelsea before he left, didn't he? You know, under Frank Lampard, he got quite a few goals. He'd probably score goals for us. But if our strikers next season are Eddie Nketiah and Tammy Abraham, then, I mean, come on. What are we doing? Yeah, we are in trouble. We are in trouble. Yeah, no. I mean, but 67 million as well. I mean, that's, you know, I'd buy Tammy Abraham if he was 30 million, maybe.
Yeah, but the other thing is,
else as well.
Like Richard, at the end of the day, we're talking about buying Jesus, and I think there's something like 45 million being thrown around there as a price tag. This man has 1 year left on his contract, and we're spending 45 million on him with a 1 year contract. 1 year left on his contract. I think that's terrible business.
Yeah, it is. No, you're right. It is. I mean, I don't know whether or not we can get the price down. Again, I wouldn't pay more than 25 million for him with a year left on his contract. You look at some of the players that we've sold in the last year of their contract. We've actually given them away
because for free.
Well, some of them have gone for free. Yeah. No, I mean, some of them we've got peanuts for. Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
crazy stuff.
We always get the arse end of the deals. It's a joke, you know. We the only two deals which surprised and shocked me were the ones where we got 35 million ish for both Ox and Iwobi, but then we blew it on Pepe, so it was like a null effect, null and void effect.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, I don't know. In terms of, you know, in one hand, that's the contradiction about the whole club. On one hand, these owners are supposed to be, you know, businessmen, and they're supposed to know what they're doing, and they're treating the club as a business, but they don't know how to bloody well buy and sell players, do they? They keep messing that up. So it's like, you know, what the hell are you guys doing? It's just, it feels to me that they don't really care about the club at all. They're so disconnected with the club as to what it really truly is and what it means. They don't care about its heritage. They don't care about its history. They don't care what it represents to the true fans out there who have been supporting for many years, and even the youngsters that are coming in and they've taken it to their heart and they love everything about the club and whatever it is, you know, and they just don't seem to give a to care, you know, they just don't care. I was going to swear then, I didn't. I stopped myself. But yeah, it's like, and that's the problem. And I'm going to keep, you know, I know I sound like a broke record. I'm going to stop now, but that is the issue. I mean, it's never going to change until they do something drastic.
Yeah.
And as I said, just change the board, for goodness sake. It's not working. We need to show ambition. We have to have hungry people that will come in with proper hunger and desire to say this isn't good enough and I want more. And okay, even if we don't get a trophy at the end of it, let's at least show fight. Let's show fight.
Exactly.
Let's just show fight in every game that we play in. You were at, Carl summed it up. Carl said something that really hit home. There's some fans that have to invest a lot of time and money just to come and see a game. And they don't just do it once a season. Some of them are season ticket holders. They do it all the time. And, for them to turn up to games like the one we saw when we played Brighton, that is a complete travesty and embarrassment. I stood there in the stands that day just with my mouth open thinking, what the hell am I watching? I'm watching a team that is doing nothing against a team that also is doing nothing. But at least then Brighton thought, God, we've got a chance here. We're so shit. But actually, we got a chance because Arsenal aren't even doing anything that, are even worse than what we are. And they ended up winning the game. It's an absolute joke.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I do get angry. And I am, Richard knows I'm normally a very positive guy. And I don't want to just paint this picture of doom and gloom and what have you. But there are moments like that where you just think, that's where we just totally lack ambition and any hunger and desire. But it's good enough for those two idiots that own the club, or whoever it is, Stan and his son, because they don't care. At least whatever you want to say about Abramovich, at least he was at all the games. He used to go to every single game, and he was cheering and he was loving and he was enjoying being part of his investment.
Leicester's owners. Look at Leicester's owners.
Right?
Look at Leicester's owners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look at our owners. How many games do they come? And it's only because when they're forced to, because it's good for their bloody PR, that then they'll turn up. Otherwise, they don't care. They don't care about this club. And that is where, if we've got owners that don't care, like what Rich said earlier, when we had the Hill Woods and we had the old guard, they actually cared about the club. And I think you're right. I think they truly believe that the move to the bigger stadium, as much as it hurt me because I loved Highbury, I miss it so much. I absolutely love that ground. But I think they truly believe that this is the only way for us to progress now. And I think they probably did believe in that, but then it just all fell apart, as Richard said. And ever since then, we've got this idiot owner in who says, oh, yeah, look at this great chance for me. And he knew what he was doing right from day one. And that's the issue. That is the bigger problem. And that's what needs to be addressed.
And while people are getting behind the process, they're just supporting this owners that don't care and don't want the club to be successful. So you can't have both. You can't say, oh yeah, I support Arteta, I support this process, I support this, I support that, I'm going to go and buy all the kits and everything else, and then the next minute say, well, the owners need to go. Well, I'm sorry, but the owners this is the owner's plan, not the manager's plan. The manager he doesn't really know what he's doing, let's be honest, really. He's not been a manager before. He doesn't really understand. He knows he's got his idea how he wants to play. He sort of has a few ideas of sort of players that he wants, but ultimately the direction the club is going in isn't Arteta's idea, isn't Arteta's direction. It's the direction the board want to take the club in because they run it. Arteta doesn't run it. He's an employee. That's all he is. He's basically doing what he's told. Yes, he'll have some sort of say in the sort of players that we buy. Oh, I want this player or that player. But ultimately, the owners are in control. They control what direction the club goes. It's not Arteta. Arteta is only an employee that's going to end up getting sacked like every other manager does. Do you know what I mean? That's what's going to happen to him. He's not in control. He's got his role that he does, and he's got certain amount of control over that particular role. But outside that, it's not his process. It's nothing to do with Arteta. The process is the club's process. He's just a part of it that he's been employed to take that part. I quite like this question from Dean in the chat, actually. Would you choose Bruce Rioch over Arteta? I mean, the funny thing is, and I put this on Twitter yesterday, right? The season Bruce Rioch was at the club, we finished 5th. We got knocked out the 3rd round of the FA Cup by a championship team, and we reached the semi-final of the League Cup, right? And he got sacked. Now we've done exactly the same under Arteta, and Arteta's been given a new contract, right? Different owners at the club, different process, right? Rioch was a terrible manager. Arteta's a terrible manager.
Can I just say something, Rich, to that though? I think that there was a different plan in motion. I think literally Bruce Rioch was there for a stopgap. They already had Wenger in
they couldn't get in the year before,
and they couldn't. And I think because Wenger was very stalwart about honouring his contracts, he stayed with Grampus until his contract finished. So I think there's a slight. I know what you're saying, and I think it's quite funny actually. But I think the difference between that situation and Arteta's season just now is we already had a new manager ready to come and join the club, and I think that was the reason.
But had Bruce Rioch, if he'd maybe finished 2nd, if he'd took us into a title challenge, and if he'd got us into the Champions League as opposed to UEFA Cup, which he got us into, would they still have sacked him after that season? I don't think. Or if he'd won the League Cup, we got to the semi-final that year, we lost on away goals.
The the problem though, Richard, was with Bruce Rioch. There's two things. Bruce Rioch is a better manager than Arteta because he actually bought Dennis Bergkamp to the club. So how can we forget that? But no, the problem with Rioch was Rioch's relationship with the board and especially with David Dean was not good.
No.
It was collapsing even before. And David Dean, he wanted Wenger. He wanted him, and that was it. So if you remember back, it was a week before the 96-97 season kicked off. Rioch was sacked 1 week before kickoff. And Stuart Houston stepped in. And then Stuart Houston wanted the job to be full-time Arsenal manager. And then when he was told that's not happening, he went down to QPR.
With Bruce Rioch.
And then Pat Rice took over. Until Wenger came. Wenger came in the September of 96. But Rioch, the only thing that Rioch did was get his 5th place, but he got his Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah, well, I mean, David Dean organised that transfer, didn't he? I think.
He sure did.
Was it George? It was Stuart Houston. I'm getting confused.
Stuart Houston.
Stuart Houston. Yeah.
Stuart Houston
he used to whistle, didn't he? Stuart used to whistle, didn't he? Yeah.
Stuart Houston took when George Graham got sacked halfway through that season. Stuart Houston took over, didn't he? Got us to the final of Europe, and then obviously Bruce Rioch came in, and he was second to Bruce Rioch, wasn't he, for that season? And then he took over briefly, and then I think he went to QPR and worked with Bruce Rioch again, didn't he? After they left Arsenal.
Was Pat Rice? Did he manage us for 3 games and he's got 100% record? He's probably the only Arsenal manager in history. He's got the best record.
He's got the best win ratio as Arsenal managers ever. Pat Rice, he did brilliant, didn't he?
Good man.
But yeah, I mean, Arsene Wenger was always the plan after George Graham because that's what David Dean wanted. David Dean knew Arsene Wenger, didn't he? Before he wanted him to take over from George Graham instead of Bruce Rioch, but obviously, like you said, Wenger wanted to stick to his contract, so he didn't. But yeah, that was a strange one because that season was mirrored this season almost identically. Really, in terms of how the season panned out. Yes, I thought under Bruce Rioch we were a lot more solid defensively. Of course, we did have some great players as well. Let's not forget, we still had Ian Wright was still there. Obviously, Dennis Bergkamp, as we said, we still had the back four, the famous back four. So Bruce Rioch came in with probably a better starting point in terms of the players that he had. But he was never. You're right. He was only a stopgap. But he did exactly the same job that Arteta's just done. Yeah, exactly the same job. Probably spending less money overall as well, because I mean the only 2 signings we made, good signings, David Platt and Dennis Bergkamp. This summer we bought 6 players, and we still only did 5th, and we still got knocked out of all the cups. So
Richard, listen, my phone, I'm on the phone here, and it's going to go dead there any minute. I'm afraid it's going to go dead on me. So listen, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on your show, and a pleasure talking to the 2 of you.
You too, Carl.
And I hope you gotta get to see and talk to the 2 of you again some stage.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. Yeah. Okay? Take it easy, man.
Thanks so much, lads.
Cheers. Speak to you soon. Take it easy.
Take care, mate. Richard, I'm probably going to have to shoot. I was only going to be here for a few minutes. I
know you've been here an hour, haven't you? You're only going to come in for 5
thank you as always. I didn't realize it's going to be this negative, but facts are facts, and it's got to be addressed, I guess. And at the end of the day, we're only like this because we care. We actually want the club. We don't want to be negative about anyone. If we would actually want to be positive about every single player, every single person that's got a connection with the club, and just want the club to do well. But end of the day, it is what it is. And I will still say, although now I've had time to reflect, I've managed to kind of get over losing to Spurs and then losing that top 4 race and only ended up 5th. I've kind of recollected and just reflected on everything, and kind of that we have to accept it, don't we? In the day, we've got no choice. But it still is a bitter disappointment, especially when we had it in our hands. So I think we've got no choice, Richard. Arteta is here now. We can't do anything about it, whether we are an Arteta in or Arteta out or sitting on the fence. He's here.
To be honest, Neil, the problems are much bigger than Arteta. And as much as I don't think Arteta's a particularly decent manager, certainly not as good a manager what we need, the problems are bigger than him, and it's irrelevant almost whether he's manager or not. The problems are going to remain unless the club the owners have a complete rethink and say, right, we want to make this club become successful, unless they do that, it doesn't matter who the manager is. It could
They're
be
not going
anybody.
to, Richard.
And they're not
You know
going to
why they're not
succeed.
going to? You know why they're not going to do it? Because they would have done it already.
You'd
They would have
imagine
done
so,
it
yeah,
already.
I agree. Yeah, you're right. They've
You know.
been
I'm sorry. It's how many years have they been there now? They would have already made inroads to start movement. And when I say they would have already started making movements for that or to achieve that, we would have seen something. But we haven't seen anything. It's just the same old. As whether it's you or Carl said earlier, it's just like being on a roundabout or on a merry-go-round, and all we're doing is just going in circles all the time. And yeah, we might pick up the odd FA Cup here and there, but we want. As nice as that is, God, it's so nice to have the record number of FA Cups. I tell you, it's brilliant. But we just want to show that bit more consistency in the 38 games per season that we play in the league. We just want to have that consistency in that fight, and that's all. When again, there might be some people listening to this saying, "Oh, we're trophy hunters." We're not, and it's not about always winning. It's just about seeing us play. So, for example, the Tottenham game, just as an example, if say we still lost it, but we lost it with absolute vigor and fight, and we did everything we can, and every player knew that was a cup final game, and they literally kill themselves to try and win it, to get the 3 points, or even a draw, because a draw would have taken a draw for that game with hindsight now.
Cool.
Then we can say, well, all right, okay, there's no point sitting there slagging the team off, because actually they gave it their all, and it might be a bad decision that cost us the game, which we have no control over. And don't let's not forget, we have had our fair share of bad decisions as well. And that's all we want to see. We want to see the fans, like Carl said, I have to get up every morning 6 days a week and go in and do a job. That's all we want to see. We just want to see them earn their keep. And that is the part which really baffles me, when sometimes they approach a game and it's just with absolute, I don't know, there's nothing there. There's nothing that you can look back on in that game and say, wow, because you just look back on it and think, what a pile of rubbish. I've never seen anything like a non-starter, no get up and go, absolutely no intensity, nothing happening, no creativity, no chances created. How many times have we seen it this season where we had literally hardly any shots on target? How can Arsenal Football Club play a game and they have hardly any shots on target? Or it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable. That just shows. Again, it comes down to ambition, doesn't it? Even if you isolate it per game, by game.
We've seen many different Arsenal teams, right, over the years, right? Many different players, managers, whatever it is, right? Different styles of play, everything else, right? Now, for me, I was at that Newcastle game last week, and I have never, ever in my entire life seen a performance that bad from any Arsenal team, ever. Never. I've never seen one that bad, because none of it made any sense. There was no tactics, there was no fight, there was no heart, there was no desire. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't mind seeing us lose games if we've tried and we've given everything and thrown everything at it. And you can lose games. Liverpool lose games. Man City lose games, right? People lose games. That's fine. It's how you lose games. And the way we lost to Tottenham, and then the way I say that Newcastle game for me, in 45 years, whatever I've been watching Arsenal, that's the worst performance I've ever seen from an Arsenal team, ever, in my entire life. Right? And we've had worse teams than we've got now. We've had better teams, obviously. We've had worse teams. We've probably had worse managers. Bruce Rioch, as somebody mentioned. And we've never played as badly as that in a game that was so important as well. That's the worst thing about it.
That's the worst thing about it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people could say, we played terribly against Man City this season, we lost 5-0, or we played terribly against Brentford and we lost. Yeah, but those games were at the start of the season. At the end of the season, when it matters, it's inexcusable to play like that. You can lose a game, fine, but don't. I mean, the last couple of weeks, what's really frustrated me is, and you saw Everton, right, 2-0 down against Crystal Palace at home, right? Yes, they was at home, the crowd were out, all this and the other. But this Arsenal team wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have come back and won that game. Absolutely no chance, would we, right? With this team, with this manager, we wouldn't have done that. And I don't even rate Frank Lampard as a good manager, particularly.
No.
But what he does do is, and what he has done is, he's got Everton playing for him. There's absolutely no doubt about it. They've come back a few times in games under him, actually. We never come back when we're losing. We never do. We never show any fight. What Everton did in that second half, right? And Everton have finished 16th in the league. They haven't got better players than us. They're not a better team than us. But yet they've shown that fight. And they've done that more than once. And that actually really annoyed me, watching and thinking, this is Everton, right? They've got more fight in them than we've had they had more fight in 45 minutes than we've shown all season. We rolled over and died against Newcastle. Why can't we, even if we'd lost, I don't mind, I say, losing 2-0 at Newcastle, the way they've been playing is no, it's not a great result, but you can understand it. But not playing like that. Throw everything at it. Bombard their goal. You just don't score. You go close, you have chances, this, that, and the other. And, you know, we've never done that. We haven't done that under this manager, not once. Not once have we done that.
I don't think he's got, he hasn't
got it in him.
I don't think we've got. We can't even count 5 games where we've been behind and won the game with Arteta. I don't think so. Anyway, I might be wrong. I'm not a stat man.
I think 5 is what it. I think actually 5 is what it is. I think it was no.
Is that what it is?
I think it's 4. I think it was 3 the previous season and 1 this season.
That's
because
ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. Yeah, in 2 whole seasons.
Do you remember when we were at our probably our best? And we used to get so many red cards, and we'd get down to 10 men. We would win games with 10 men, and sometimes
just on heart behind. Just on heart, we won it on heart. That's what we won it on.
And you know, how could we do that now? All right, okay, we did it once with when we drew against Chelsea. When Martinelli ran up literally down the whole pitch.
Wolves this season, we won 1-0 at Wolves when we were down at 10 men, but we were already 1-0 up. We were just hanging on to a lead rather than having to win.
But I'm talking about coming from behind. You see, and it's just like our heads drop as soon as Tottenham got that penalty in that game. That was it. We were finished. You know, if you look back at the older North London derbies, we fought even when we went behind. I think that one of the 5-2s we were 2-0 down, weren't we? One of the 5-2 wins that we had.
We were the first one.
We were 2-0 down. And we come back and won that 5-2. You know, we've always shown that bit of spirit and guile and grit to come back. And it's just not, it doesn't seem to be happening with this team. And he's got to address that. I think he's got to address his own way of managing on the pitch. As Carl was saying, you know, he's playing his arms like an air traffic controller or something all over the place. And he's just, you know, he's got to let the players have a little belief in themselves and allow them that creativity, and to just let them do what they need to do. Like, you know, having that example of Partey being confused and coming up to him saying, I don't know what you're asking me to do. Let Partey go on and do his thing. He's not a bad player. I don't care what anyone says. You know, yes, he's obviously struggling with injuries now, but he's not a bad player. When he's on top form, he's brilliant. And to be honest, just let them have that creative. But I you know, the way I think Arteta's a bit of a control freak. And that is why he's not got on with some of the players, like, for example, the Aubameyang, which he's got rid of. And I think that's another issue. If he can address all these issues, because now we are stuck with him, as I said, it doesn't matter where you sit on the Arteta situation. We are stuck with him. We've got to deal with that. And if he can just tweak some of his management styles, it could help. But being the way he is, I can't see it happening. See, I'm being so negative at this point. I feel bad, but I just, you know, it's the way I feel at the moment.
Sean in the chat has got an interview. He says, are you going to compliment the manager for anything? Well, we're finding it, I think you probably gather, we're finding it difficult. So, Sean, if you can give us something that he should be complimented on, then please drop it in the chat and we'll talk about it. Because at this moment, I'm struggling to think of anything that I think he's done well since he's been here. He won the FA Cup, okay, fair enough, but that was 2 years ago. Since then, he's taken us backwards in 2 years. He got us out of Europe. Yes, he's got us back into Europe again, but he's the one who took us out of Europe in the first place. So please help us out. Please tell me something that you think he should be complimented on, because I'm really, really struggling. I know Neil's really struggling, and Kyle definitely was struggling to find anything to compliment our Mikel Arteta on. And, you know, I would love to be able to throw loads of compliments at him, because if we are, that means he's doing a great job. And then we're all happy, because it means we're doing well as a club. We're progressing. We're going to be, you know, going forward. Loki says there, we went 1-0 down 20 times, 1-1. Yeah, exactly. This is what we call. That was the Wolves game, wasn't it? When when we got that late comeback to win that game. And as Terry says there, like Loki said, he's got a good head of hair. Well, he has got hair, actually. Did Loki mention that in the comments? Did he? I must have missed that one.
Yeah, he did. He did.
But yeah, I mean, he has got nice hair, actually. Sean says there, COVID parties plus injuries. Well, I mean, I don't know. I am finding it, as time's going on and on, I'm finding it more and more difficult to warm to Arteta. I don't like his on-pitch demeanour at the side of the pitch, as Kyle mentioned before. He doesn't let the players play, and I don't know. To me, if you've prepared your team right in the week, you shouldn't need to be constantly telling them what to do in the 90 minutes of a game, because they should already know, because you just spent a week working on it with them. So, do you not trust them to carry out your instructions? I mean, Xhaka almost alluded to that, didn't he, after the Newcastle game, saying, "Oh, we didn't carry out the coach's instructions." Well, could it be the instructions are too complicated? Don't forget, these are footballers. They're not generally the brightest people in the world. No disrespect to most footballers, but most of them aren't, are they? Because a lot of them didn't have proper education. They went out of school straight into playing football, didn't they? And, they're not the most brightest people. So maybe they don't understand. And maybe that's why they're not carrying out. Or is he just overcomplicating it, which to me seems more likely, the way he's running around like this all the time. It's quite simple, isn't it? When we've got the ball, we do this. When we don't have the ball, we do that, right? And when we've got a set piece, we'll do this. And when we're defending a set piece, we do that. I mean, it's basic stuff, isn't it? If anybody's played football on a Sunday morning, this is what you do. You don't overcomplicate it, because everybody knows how to play football. When you get the ball, the idea is to pass to one of your teammates, ideally, and try to get the ball up the other end of the pitch and score a goal, right? Because that's how that's what football's about. And yes, you can do this, you can do that, and the other, right? Yes, fine. Have your tactics, work all that out, brilliant. But the players should know before they go onto the pitch, when we have the ball, this is what we do. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to play it this way. When we don't have the ball, we all drop in. But it seems like when we've got the ball, he's screaming at them what they're doing. When we don't have the ball, he's screaming at them again. Well, you've told them. You spent the last 2 years. I mean, with some of these players,
you leave that on the training pitch. You leave all of that on the training pitch. Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. He's like an extreme of Wenger. I mean, Wenger would be very completely different. He would just sit down and just let his players get on with it. And we've heard, whether it's true or not, from some of the ex-players that he was quite quiet in the evening at half time in the dressing room. It was very rarely that he exploded or anything, and he that was his style, which is fine. But I'll be honest with you, Richard, I don't mind the animated person that Arteta is. I quite like a little bit of engagement, because it shows that you actually gives care for what you're trying to achieve. But as long as you're trying to achieve it in the right way, you see. So I think we've gone from one extreme to the other. We need a bit of balance. We need a bit of calmness within him as well, and think, right, let the players do what they need to do. Because I've told them they've had their instructions. We've done our homework on this particular opponent before the game. Right now, it's up to them to go and do what we've been doing on the training pitch leading up to this particular game. And when he's needed to maybe come in and maybe shout some instructions out, fair enough. But that's again going back to pitch leadership, which we do not have. It comes down to having a captain on the pitch, which is going to kind of echo his instructions, and also maybe fill in where maybe Arteta may have got something not quite right.
I mean, there's that story, isn't there, that Lee Dixon says about before his first North London derby, when Tony Adams got him up against the wall and said, "We do not lose this game. This is what it means to us," right? Tony Adams did it, not the manager, George Graham at the time, right? And George Graham was a disciplinary manager, wasn't he, by all accounts? But this was Tony Adams, captain, right? And it's like those players, whatever Arteta does, they don't understand how important the game is to Arsenal. How important it is not to lose against anybody. Tottenham, that game against Tottenham was a prime example of that, because we just rolled over against Tottenham, which is unacceptable,
horrible.
And we wouldn't have you wouldn't have do that if you've got the right characters. You don't let that happen, and not just that one game, but when it's really important. I mean, Sean, to be fair to him, he's come up with a few things that we can compliment him on. He says 2 points behind Spurs and 5 behind Chelsea's trophy-laden superstars with a super lean and young team. That's the end result, and that's fair enough. But still, ultimately, 2 points behind Tottenham when we were clear of them with 3 games to play. That's the point as well. So we kind of threw that away, didn't we? And although you to me, finishing 2 points behind a team that you were ahead of with 2 games to play isn't an achievement. It's a failure, especially when that team happens to be that lot down the road who are the specialists in failure, to use a term that was used once before when it was related to Arsenal. But that's not an achievement. Yes, finishing 5 points behind Chelsea. What you've got to remember is with Chelsea, and I'm not trying to undermine where we finished in the league or the points that we got, anything like that. After quite early this season, you could quite clearly see Chelsea knew they wasn't going to win the Premier League. They wasn't good enough to keep up with Man City and Chelsea. They put their eggs into different baskets, and they knew they'd finish in the top 4 because they knew they were good enough. And that's what they kind of went through the motions a little bit, finished in the top 4, got their job done. Towards the end of the season, they dropped off because they'd already done their job earlier in the season. We were still chasing, so we were picking up points because it was so important that we had to. And even then, we still lost half of our last 10 games. We lost 5 of our last 10 games, when we were chasing something. Chelsea had already achieved what they wanted to achieve. They were already going to be in the top 4, and they were in the FA Cup final, and they reached the League Cup final. If we'd done that, if we was in 2 cup finals and we'd finished where we finished, I'd have put my hands on and said, brilliant, what a season. Brilliant season. But we didn't do that. We got knocked out of the FA Cup by Nottingham Forest. We got knocked out of the League Cup by Liverpool, fair enough. Most teams lose to Liverpool, but even so. So to me, and finishing 2 points behind Tottenham when we were clear of them, in fact, we were so far clear of them, we had 3 games in hand and 4 points clear of them, however long ago that was, March time, April, whenever it was. Do you know what I mean? And they finished above us. So that isn't something to compliment him on, finishing 2 points behind Tottenham when we were so far clear. Yes, they've got better players than us. They've got a more experienced squad than us. But even so, we still blew that, didn't we? What else have we got? Is there any other reasons? Sean says there, Arteta has no world-class players. Why hasn't he got any? Is he because he's not bought any? Is that the reason? Or he did have 1 or 2 and got rid of them because he didn't like them. He didn't get on with them. Or he thought they were disruptive. Or they wasn't able to do the one role that the only one way that he can play. They wasn't able to adapt to that. Aubameyang being the prime example. When Arteta came along, Arteta and Aubameyang and Lacazette had scored 50 goals between them the season before. 50-goal partnership, right? That's as good as Kane and Son. In fact, it's probably better than Kane and Son, right? And he had those 2 players. And what's he done? He stopped them both scoring. He took away all of their goals, right? And people say, Aubameyang was a bad influence. That's Aubameyang's fault. Well, okay, we may accept that it could have been partly Aubameyang's fault, but why has Lacazette's goals dried up as well at the same time? Why? Lacazette scored 19 goals that season. He scored 17 goals the season before. He scored 6 goals this season under this manager. Aubameyang was going from scoring 30 goals a season to scoring 15 last season. Half of his goals were taken away. And that's not just down to the player on its own. When it's happened, if it was just one player that happened to, it happened to both our strikers. Both of them, their goals dried up under this manager. That's the manager's fault. He had world-class, people wouldn't say they're world-class, but the numbers that Aubameyang was producing, not just with us, but when he was at Dortmund before, we haven't had numbers like that consistently since Thierry Henry. Someone scoring 30 goals regularly every season, you can guarantee they're going to get 30 goals. He did that his first 2 seasons at Arsenal, 31 and 29, 60 goals in 2 seasons, right? We haven't had that since Thierry Henry, that level of consistency of goals. And what did Arteta do? We had that. And what you would do is you'd come in and think, brilliant, I've got this great goal scorer. I'm going to build the team around that, get him to score 30 goals, and then we're fine. We're sorted. I'll sort the defence out. We'll concede less goals. We've got a 30-goal striker. Brilliant. And his mate scores 20 goals, 15 goals next to him. But he completely ruined that, because he wanted to play this system like Man City when they don't need a striker. Man City gets all their goals from midfield and their wide players, right? That's what he was going to do. And yet he had 2 strikers that scored 50 goals. If Conte had gone into Tottenham and said, right, Harry Kane, you're going to play left wing. Don't go in the penalty area. Go and play left back. Son, I'm not even going to pick you because I don't think you're good enough. Would he have done that? No, he wouldn't. What he's done was Conte went in there and he got the best out of them too. Harry Kane wasn't scoring before Conte came in this season. He scored, 2 goals up till November? 2 or 3 goals. Son had scored a few. Son got a golden boot because Conte knew how to get the best out of him. We had a striker that had a golden boot, and Arteta stopped him scoring. So he had a world-class finisher in Aubameyang, world-class numbers of goals he was scoring. Look at his career; he scored 300 odd goals, Aubameyang, in his career, 500 odd games. That's a good strike rate. He had that player, and he let him go, and he even paid to let him go. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not to say he's got no world-class players. That's his fault. It's on him because he hasn't bought any world-class players, and the ones that he had that you could almost consider world-class, he didn't like. He got rid of. Ozil was another one. Was Ozil world-class at the time? Maybe not, but he was a world-class player. Won World Cups, won all these other stuff, most assists ever in Premier League history. A team that didn't have any creativity. Sean says there, name the other world-class player. Aubameyang offered nothing pre-season and the first half of the season, plus disrespect. Well, we don't know what his attitude was. We can only go off stories that's come out. Yes, it seemed as though he's had similar issues, hasn't he, Aubameyang, disciplinary-wise at other clubs before. And I'm not saying he's blameless in all of this, because he's not, clearly. And I wouldn't try and say that he was. But when he had similar problems at Dortmund, when Thomas Tuchel was the manager there, and I think he went on strike, didn't he, at one point, and he didn't, or Tuchel banned him from the ground or did whatever he did. And then he came back in the next game, Aubameyang, he scored a hat-trick in the next game that he got picked back in the team, he scored a hat-trick because Tuchel was able to differentiate between his personal feelings, what he had done, and his professional job, which is getting him to perform on the pitch. And that's what Arteta wasn't able to do. He's not able to do that. I don't think he can separate those feelings. When he falls out with somebody, that's it. He doesn't care how good they might be for the team. It's a personal thing with him then. It seems to be. It's been repeated a few times.
I think Rich he finds it difficult to handle the bigger personalities. If people like even like Guendouzi, for an example, Guendouzi's like quite an outlandish, he seems to be someone who's vocal, who speaks his mind and does what he wants to do, kind of thing. And I think he struggles with characters like that. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not behind the scenes. I'm just going from what I can see. But it might be that he will have potential issues with trying to control the bigger personalities. Maybe. I mean, Sean is making some. Sean, I can't remember I think he's making some good points. I mean, I've also felt that Aubameyang. To be fair, I agree. I do hear what you're saying as well, Rich. I'm kind of trying to be a bit of play devil's advocate a little bit here. I think his attitude did go. It wandered. It definitely wasn't right at one point. No, there were some games I was seeing him in, and he just, if you remember, let me just give you an example. You remember when he first came on board, I always used to say that, my God, I've never seen a player play with such happiness. He's got a massive grin on his face. He's so happy to be there. He'd be smiling, had the biggest smile on the pitch. And then when it was coming to the point where he was maybe becoming ineffective, his whole persona changed, head down, shaking his head, the smile. And I'm not saying that's him. I'm not saying that's him.
What came first, Neil? What came first? We don't know, do we? What was going on behind the scenes of Arteta caused him to be unhappy? And then his performances got affected, or did his performances become affected, which then annoyed Arteta? And then which came? We don't know, do we? It's chicken and egg, isn't it? It's impossible to know because it wasn't there.
It is. Yeah,
and he's always going to say it was Aubameyang's fault, isn't he, to cover his own back? And Aubameyang's probably going to blame Arteta to cover his own back.
Of course.
So we don't really know, do we, ultimately? No. Yes, Aubameyang's had problems in his past in his career, so we know he can be a difficult character to deal with sometimes. We know that. We do know that. And even Lacazette said, didn't he, there's two Aubameyangs. There's, the nice Aubameyang off the pitch, and they loved each other. And there's the Aubameyang maybe separate to that with his brother and all those influences, which maybe isn't a good Aubameyang. And I think, we can't dismiss that as being a reason, and I think that's fair enough. But ultimately, I suppose it's as a manager, you've got to be able to manage people better. Like you said, Guendouzi, he kind of fell out of him for whatever reason, shipped him out. Aubameyang fell out of him, shipped him out. Ozil, he fell out with him, shipped him out. We've had to pay to get rid of two of them. We had to pay a lot of money to get rid of Ozil, and quite a lot to get rid of Aubameyang by all accounts.
Do you know Ozil? Can I just say, digressing a little bit, I think with Ozil, again, he's Marmite to so many fans. Some fans say utter useless. What a waste of space. What rubbish player. And then other fans think that he's like just amazing. The skills that he had, and he did have skills. He had raw talent. There's no question about it. I think for me, and this is just my opinion, I think after he won the World Cup, that was him done with football. Really, I mean, he was obviously carries on because it's paying. Yeah,
you're probably right.
But I think his hunger completely dissipated once he'd won that World Cup, because he probably felt, well, I've done it. I've won the biggest competition in the world. I don't really care anymore. And there were some games. It wasn't enough. It wasn't consistent enough. But there were some games where he was mesmerizing. Some of the stuff he was doing, some of the quick thinking, his vision, the passing. So I'm not quite sure whether when Arteta came along, it was because of Arteta solely because of that. I think at that point, Ozil probably already lost.
Was he not a little bit frustrated with the fact that he was setting up these chances for very poor players who were constantly missing them?
True as well.
You can see sometimes. I can remember a lot of games you'd watch him. He'd put a brilliant pass through to somebody, and they would then completely mess it up. And you could see the look on his face. He's almost thinking to himself, "What on earth am I doing here?"
Yeah, no, that is a good point.
And I think that would have been demotivating for a player like Ozil, who he'd been used to being at Real Madrid with all those great players around the Galacticos and setting people up and them scoring and being given the ball when he needed it. There were so many times when he'd make a little run somewhere, needs the ball, crying for the ball, he didn't get it. And you could see his body language was like, what are you doing? What am I doing here? You're not good enough I'm too good
think
to play with you.
I think
You
he
could
had two
almost
good spells. He had two good
so-
spells. I think there was a spell when Ramsey was playing really well, and he was feeding. You know, they were playing well with each other. I think it was Ramsey. And
Sanchez.
before, do you remember when Ramsey went on that crazy run and then he got injured and that was it? You know, that was again another untimely key injury for us. It always seems to happen to our club. And then there was a time when
Sanchez,
I think he was linking up quite well with Sanchez.
yeah.
You know, think what you want of Sanchez, but I think he was one of those players for me, which we haven't had in years, which could turn a game around. You know,
On
we
his own.
lack that
Yeah,
on his
yeah.
own. You know, he could be ineffective, and he could. I know he used to lose the ball a lot. I know he did a lot of that, but sometimes the magic and the goals that he was scoring were great. I'm not saying I'm a big fan of his or whatever. But I do remember there was a point in time where Ozil and Sanchez were ticking off each other, playing harmoniously. It's almost as if they were mind reading each other. They knew exactly where the ball needs to be for Sanchez and vice versa, and what each other could bring to the table. So, you know, there have been moments, you know, we can't dismiss it and say Ozil was just shit all round. He wasn't.
No.
I just think it was a combination of what you're saying. Maybe he didn't have the players that would work effectively around him. And also, I think there is a part of the fact that he won the World Cup and he lost a lot of hunger for the game as well. So I think it could be a combination of the two. So anyway.
Yeah, I kind of, I think you may well be right. Sean says, Richard, you said Arsenal had two world-class players this season. No, I mean, we had two world-class players when Arteta arrived at the club, not now, which I think were Ozil and Aubameyang, potentially, because of the goals Aubameyang scored, and Ozil, he was a world-class player. And he says that they had none. Yeah, I don't think this season we didn't have any. We haven't really had a world-class player probably since Ozil, actually, have we? I say Aubameyang with his goals. His goal output was a world-class goal scorer, wasn't he? There's no doubt about that, the number of goals that he scored. So he says, it doesn't look like Man City miss Arteta's talent. No, but they can afford to replace anybody anyway with somebody better, so I won't worry too much about that. Sean says, Arteta has to build, no passengers. Yeah, you're right, and that's true. And he does need to build because he's got rid of all the experienced players that he had. So he has got to build. But what he's got to start building, you can't build a house unless you build the foundations. And it's like he hasn't got the foundations because there's no experience at all in the squad. And without that foundation, you can't build up from there. It's impossible. So he's responsible for that partly, well, maybe more than partly, because he's the one who maybe didn't want certain players, has got rid of them. Maybe the club have forced him to get rid of some because of the wages as well. We don't know. Maybe Arteta's gone along with the player because he's had to, because he's an employee, as I said, and I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. Sean says Ozil is one of those players who had to be around really these. But yeah, exactly. That was the point we were making before. A comparison is Steven Gerrard, who carried Liverpool for years. Ozil's attitude is a disgrace. Yeah, I mean, I think Ozil and Steven Gerrard, they're totally different types of players, aren't they? Steven Gerrard was, a bit like we mentioned Tony Adams before. He was Liverpool's Tony Adams, wasn't he? And you couldn't compare Ozil to him because he's a different type of character. He's a different type of player. He wasn't the type of player ever to take a game by the scruff of the neck. Even when he was at his best, maybe his Real Madrid days, he never took the game by the scruff of the neck. And he did, as you rightly said, as we've said, he needed really good players around him because he was a visionary. So he got the ball and he needed people to make the runs. He needed people to read where he was going to put the ball because he could split a defence open in a second. And players like that, you have to make allowances for the fact that they've got a lot of weaknesses in other areas of their game. And you've got to be able to. Arsene Wenger made a lot of allowances for Mesut Ozil, didn't he? A lot of the time. And maybe a lot of people felt he shouldn't have done. But ultimately, you have to say he got the best out of him at Arsenal because after Arsene Wenger left, Ozil's career at Arsenal quickly went downhill, didn't it? Emery couldn't really deal with him. Arteta couldn't deal with him.
Rich, sorry, can I just interrupt there? I think Wenger was also under pressure because it was his first big marquee signing. Because he was always, with this thing that I don't have to spend big to bring out the best in players, which worked in the beginning of his tenure at Arsenal. Of course, it did. He bringing in Anelka for 450,000, where he was selling him for 23, and bringing in Vieira for what was it, 350,000, something stupid money, and making them into world class players, players like Toure and the likes. And I think then it got to the point, and I think there was a lot of pressure on him because things weren't kind of moving maybe the way we were seeing all these other big clubs come in. When I say big clubs, I mean clubs that have got finance behind them because of these rich owners. making ridiculous signings for ridiculous money, and we were still not doing it. And then all of a sudden, it was that 11th hour signing, wasn't it? Right at the end, just on the deadline moment.
Yeah.
Big news, we've done it. We've signed Ozil. And I think because he had paid so much money for him, there was that expectation that he has to be present. The team has to be built around him. He has to be picked, no matter if he's playing rubbish or not. There were so many times I remember we were watching a game and thinking, Ozil is doing nothing today, absolutely nothing. Substitute him, take him off. Never took him off. Do you remember Wenger would never ever take him off, no matter what? Because I think it would almost be like he would be admitting defeat. That I brought this big player in, and I've got to keep him on. He's got to produce. He's got to do something. So I think there was a bit of that in there as well with Wenger. But anyway, that again, it's just an opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously there were a lot of issues around Ozil. He's a kind of a subject on his own, isn't he? Really, let's be honest. But the fact of the matter is that other managers previously had managed to get a tune out of Ozil, and Emery struggled mostly. And obviously Arteta really struggled, and that's, to me, yes, I'm not saying, again, like with Aubameyang, I'm not saying Ozil's completely blameless and all of that, because he's not, and I agree his attitude wasn't great. I mean, I can remember a lot of away games I went to at that time when Ozil was playing, and spent the whole journey driving home saying how lazy Ozil is, he don't do nothing, why is he even in the team? And then there'd be other moments where he'd be amazing, he'd do some amazing things, and you think, wow, and it took your breath away almost how good he was. So he was a frustrating player, Ozil, and yes, maybe he wasn't ever properly managed at Arsenal, ever really managed properly, I don't know, but he certainly had his moments under Wenger in particular where he was incredible. I mean, there was that one season when he break the assist record, didn't he? Or he got close to the assist record. And we didn't have a great team that year, let's be honest. We didn't have a fantastic team, did we? But he was just amazing that season. I think he scored 12 goals. He had like 25 assists, whatever it is. And they're like top quality numbers, considering he was technically a hit and miss player. And he had, I think Sanchez was playing actually that season.
I think so, yeah.
Those two were brilliant together. I can remember many
games. That's what I said earlier, exactly that.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah. So Ozil did need that as well, yes. And I'm not saying he was totally blameless, but he was a world-class player. And he was at Arsenal when Arteta arrived, as was Aubameyang, as was Lacazette, who was a goal scorer. He wasn't world-class, don't get me wrong, but he was a goal scorer who would score 15 upwards a season. Aubameyang was scoring 30 upwards a season. Ozil was having, 20 assists or 15 assists up a season. Do you know what I mean? These were players that we had at the club. And he couldn't deal with them. And their output shot down as once Arteta came in. So he's got to be at least partly responsible for that, if not totally responsible. No, because the players have got to take their own responsibility as well. But he's partly responsible for that. And we can't dismiss that fact just because maybe Aubameyang and Ozil are difficult characters and Lacazette's getting older, so he can't score as many goals. Yes, they're all factors, and I'm sure other factors as well.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, in the end of the day, that's what you're paid for. You're paid money to
you pay your manager. Your manager's got to manage your team. He's got to manage the players that you've got. Now, we're not in a position where we can say, okay, we'll get rid of Aubameyang and Ozil. We'll get in 2 more world-class players to replace them. We're not going to do that because we can't afford to do that. So he's got to either get more out of those players while he's got them, or he's got to find some way of dealing with that better than just saying, well, I'm not going to pick you. And Ozil didn't even get picked for 6 months. He wasn't even on the bench for 6 months.
That's right.
That's ridiculous for a player that on that amount of money, getting paid on that contract. Aubameyang as well, he just basically started leaving him out of the team.
Yeah.
When they're on that big contract, that's bad management. You've got to be able to manage that situation better.
Yeah. I think even with the League Cup games where he could have brought him on and he wasn't bringing him on, you're right. Yeah, we were surprised. Like, I was not in it. He's definitely finished.
I'll never forget that game. I'll never forget the game in the lockdown season when we played at Southampton. It was in the middle of summer, and Ozil was sitting in the stand with an umbrella. Do you remember, to protect him from the sun?
Oh, yeah.
He was a substitute that day. He was on we won the game, so it didn't matter, right? But he was a substitute, and he wasn't interested. He knew he wasn't going to come on, so he's sitting there. He hasn't got shin pads on. He's sitting in the sun with an umbrella to stop him getting sunburn on his head, right?
That's right.
And he spent the whole game doing that because he knew he wasn't going to come on. And it's like, he's the player you're paying at that time. He was the biggest contract ever. He was paying the most amount of money, and you're just letting him sit in a stand with an umbrella rather than actually saying, we need you on the pitch. Even if we only need you for 20 minutes, we might need you, so you've got to be ready. Ozil wasn't going to play. He knew he wasn't going to play, and that went on for ages, didn't it? Until finally until finally we managed to pay him out of his contract after a year, or however long it was. You know, I don't know. Anyway, Sean says we are talking attitude though. Arteta is learning and doesn't need lazy attitudes around the team. I agree about foundations. Laka, Kieran, and Thomas vanished. Give Arteta a break. It's difficult to give him a break when he's responsible for a lot of the problems, isn't he? That's the problem I've got with it. Dean says the point is Arsenal had us playing ball and we were scoring goals. That's true, yeah. The only problem was we lost to Steele and leaky at the back. Yeah, we were leaky at the back. Arsene Wenger's issue was, well, if we keep the ball, we're not going to concede goals. But when we didn't have the ball, we were very vulnerable, wasn't we? Quite often for that reason. And Dean says Arsene knew how to use creative players. He did, yeah, because his whole career was based on creative players. That's what he wanted. He wasn't that interested in defending, was he? Let's be honest. The defensive side of the game. We had great defenders when he came. He just let them get on with it, didn't he? And then yes, he did replace him, didn't he? Sol Campbell and Kolo Touré, and he did. You know, Ashley Cole came through, and he brought Lauren and stuff like that. But Kolo Touré and Lauren were both midfield players. He played them in defence because he knew they had that strength to be able to play in defence. But he never really bought very many good defenders, did he, Arsenal? Because he didn't understand defending, I don't think. He understood how to attack, how to be creative, but he didn't really understand. Whereas it seems like Arteta's the other way around. He seems to like stockpile his team with loads of defenders, don't buy any strikers or attacking players, and even now we're conceding more goals because we don't have a midfield to protect the defence as well, do we? But anyway, Sean says, "Hey guys, I love this discussion, even though we disagree on some things. But that's what it's about, isn't it? You know, ultimately, I've got no problem with people having different opinions, and it's great. And I'm quite happy to discuss the opinions as well. And hopefully, we'll come to an agreement that actually Arteta's not as good as you think he is."
You're trying to be Brian Clough here.
Brian Clough, yeah. That's right. And Sean says, "I agree with this." He said we were false for renewing Ozil's contract. Yeah, we were. The reason why we did it was because we lost Sanchez, and I think at that particular time, if we'd lost Ozil and Sanchez in the same window, there'd have been riots. So I think they had to keep Ozil.
Yeah.
So they offered him a contract, and it was wrong. I agree. We shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have given Aubameyang a contract we gave him either, even though he just won us the FA Cup, and everybody loved him at the time. We all did, and we were quite happy that he signed. We loved him to sign, but ultimately, that was the wrong decision. Looking back on it now, Ozil's contract was the wrong decision, and it's made it more difficult to bring in the players that we need because the money was tied up in those two. We've had to pay them out, so it's cost us money there, and the owners are probably thinking, you know what? I'm not doing that again. Let's just buy a load of kids and we're fine. We aren't going to go through that again. I don't know if that's the reason. Terry says, we would be doing well if all the players Arteta wanted to buy from Man City we would have won the league this year. Well, would we though? Would we though? Because one, Pep isn't going to sell us the players that's going to win him the league, is he? He's going to sell us the players that he doesn't really need anymore. Jesus is the biggest example of that. If he thought Jesus was a player that he needed to win the league next year, he wouldn't sell him.
Never sell him.
Absolutely no chance. He'd either keep him or he'd get him out of the country and sell him abroad. If we buy Jesus, it's because Pep doesn't believe Jesus is a striker that he needs to take Manchester City on to where they need to go, and that's where we need to go. As well, we want to get to that direction. So buying Man City's cast-offs isn't necessarily going to...
That's where Wenger made one of his biggest mistakes when he sold Van Persie to Ferguson in Ferguson's last season. I really believe, and maybe you were touching on with Carl, I think, there was a couple of moments even in Wenger's reign, we could have won the league a couple of times. I think that would have been one of the seasons. If we had held on to Van Persie that one season, I think that's what we were lacking in that season. That team we had, whatever it was, we just needed a Van Persie in it, and I think we could have, if not won it, certainly challenged for the league. And then the other occasion is when Eduardo broke his leg. I think we would have gone on to win things that year as well. Yeah. So there has been some misfortunes as well for us. But Wenger made a mistake. He admits it. I think he admitted it. I think he admitted it that selling Wenger to Van Persie to my biggest rival. That's something you don't do. So what you just said there. Pep's only going to be selling, Jesus if he knows that he's not part of his plans anymore. But,
or he maybe looks at it and thinks, well, Arsenal are no threat anyway, so it doesn't matter. They can have him. He's not going to win them the league on his own because the rest of them are just bang average. He may look at it like that. And, if Jesus doesn't want to sign a new contract, he can get money for him. They'll sell him. I don't believe he would sell us a top player that he thought was a top player for him. He wouldn't do that. No. Jesus has been playing pretty well, lad. He scored a few goals. He actually played pretty well, I thought, against Aston Villa. And he seems to have that mentality that we're lacking, that we've maybe been lacking since since Sanchez actually in that position on the pitch. That kind of, I mean, I think Martinelli's got it, but he lacks the experience at the moment, and that I think Jesus has got that attitude. So I've got no problem with us buying Jesus. I just don't believe Pep would sell us Jesus if he thought Jesus was going to take us.
I do agree with that.
He's not that stupid.
No way.
He's not. He's like he wouldn't sell no one to Liverpool, would he? He wouldn't even sell any of his players to Liverpool. He wouldn't sell any of his players to the top sides in Europe because he knows they're going to come back and bite him. He knows he can sell players to Arsenal because we're nothing to him. You know, Arteta's his best mate and he wants to help him out, but he wouldn't. He's not exactly going to sell us Kevin De Bruyne, is he? Let's be honest.
What a player he is, though. What a player he is.
He's not going to sell us him, is he? You know what I mean? He wouldn't. He's not going to sell us Mahrez, is he? He's not going to sell us players that'll improve us, particularly. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Sean says, Richard, please understand my response to the foundations. You can't blame Arteta for Laka's output. Well, we can, because he's not managed him properly. And he's made him play in a deeper role. Kieran Tierney and Thomas being injured. No, you can't blame him for them getting injured. What you can blame him for is not having adequate cover in place. He bought Nuno Tavares, who wasn't even good enough. He didn't even think he was good enough to play because he played Xhaka there in one game. And he was reluctant to play Nuno Tavares. That's Arteta's fault because he bought that player. You know, Thomas Partey, he bought Lokonga too as cover. And when Thomas Partey was injured, he didn't even play Lokonga. He played El Neni. You know, so we can blame Arteta for it. We can't blame him for the injuries. No, injuries happen. And these things happen, and that's one of those things. And I don't blame him for the injuries. I do blame him for not having adequate cover in place. Not, you know, you can't cover every single player. Of course not. But he actually bought a left back and he bought a central midfield player. But he didn't have enough trust in those players that he bought to have to play them when they were needed, when there were injuries, which is what he bought them for. So to me, that lies on Arteta. He should have either bought better quality backups in the first place. Then we would have been able to survive the injuries a bit better than what we did. Because let's face it, Kieran Tierney was one of our biggest misses because of how important he was to our attacking play as well. And Nuno Tavares just isn't in that same level. But not many players are. He's a great left back, Kieran Tierney, let's be honest. And it's difficult to cover for that. But you've got to have a plan in place. What if we can't play these players? You need to have something. And I think that is down to him, personally. Not the injuries, but the lack of cover. And Sean says, Richard, your argument for Jesus is flawed. Some players shine and evolve at other clubs. Example, Mo Salah. Yeah, they do, and that's true. But Jesus has been at Man City for a long, long time. He's been there. Mo Salah was only at Chelsea very briefly, wasn't he? And he was probably badly managed. But Jesus has been at Man City, 6-7 years under Pep, and he's been a decent enough player. He scored quite a few goals. So I'm not saying I'd quite like us to sign Jesus because I think he's better than what we've got, and he's won lots of trophies. So he understands what winning's about. He knows
winning mentality. Yeah,
he's got a winning mentality, and I think he's got that thing that Alexis Sanchez had, and I think he'd be a positive signing for us. So I'd quite like Jesus, but I just don't think if Pep believed he was that good, Pep wouldn't sell him to us. He wouldn't. He'd sell him abroad somewhere that wasn't going to be a threat to him. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I hope we do get him because I actually think that would be a good signing for us. And he could be the sort of player that is going to improve us, definitely. As long as he's not the only signing that we make or the only top player that we sign. Because he is a top player, Jesus. I don't really doubt about that. You know, his goal scoring record's good. I've been really impressed with how he's been playing in the last few weeks. I thought against Aston Villa, I thought he didn't score. I thought he was brilliant in that game. Their comeback, he was, you know, you could see how much it meant to him and how much he was fighting. And that's what I want to see from our players. You know, that's why I loved Alexis Sanchez for that reason. Because no matter how the game was going, how he was playing, that made no difference. He would fight for every single ball. He would do anything he could. You know what I mean? And that's what I like. I don't care if we win games all the time, if we've got that attitude. And I like that. Loki says, how about Calvert-Lewin? I'm unsure about Calvert-Lewin. Again, he's better than what we've got, and he would be a great option because we lack that physical presence in the box, don't we? We lack someone who can attack the ball in the air. And would he suit the way that we play? Well, we used to put a lot of crosses in the box, certainly when Kieran Tierney was fit, didn't have anyone to finish him off. Yeah, possibly. Calvert-Lewin would be an option, depending on the price. You're looking at silly money for him, aren't we, potentially, I think. And if that's the case, I would probably say no. If the price was okay, I think he can definitely offer us something that we don't have. A bit like Jesus, he'll improve what we've got. And if we were to sign Calvert-Lewin and Jesus as our two strikers this summer, I'll be pretty happy with that, as long as we improved elsewhere as well. But if we got those two strikers in, I'd be reasonably happy with that. I think, yeah, we've got two strikers that are going to improve us, improve our goal output. And, you know, Calvert-Lewin in particular can be a focal point for your attack, can't he? Because he holds the ball up well, he's strong. And I say he's good in the air. So yeah, and with Jesus, he's got great movement, hasn't he? He's a tricky little player. He makes good runs. He can finish. He's a bit like a Sylvain Wiltord type, isn't he? Jesus. He's a good finisher. He's got good movement, but he's not a fantastic footballer as such. But he's tricky, isn't he? He's a tricky little player, and he gets himself into some good positions. I think those two would be two good signings. But Loki says that Everton will be in trouble with FFP. Yeah, that's the rumour. So they may have to sell a few players, mightn't they? So we may get him a bit cheaper. If we can, I'll snap their end off. People are talking about Richarlison and dismissing him. I mean, I think Richarlison's a great player, actually. Yes, he's another with a bit of an attitude, though, isn't he? So I don't think Arteta would want him, because I don't think he's a little bit of a loose cannon, isn't he, Richarlison? You've seen what he's done at Everton, the way he sometimes, things he's done on the pitch and stuff like that. So he's a little bit of a loose cannon. So I'm not sure if Arteta would go for Richarlison, but I think he's a very good player, actually. They've got one or two decent players, Everton. In a way, I was kind of hoping they went down, because their players would have been available, and we might have been able to go in and pinch one or two. They can keep Iwobi, but some of the others we might. We don't want him back.
If we got Iwobi, then definitely we're going backwards. There would be
Can you imagine?
two ways about it.
We signed Iwobi. Everyone come back to us and say, sorry, we want our money back. We'll have to take it back.
Please don't. Richard, I'm going to have to shoot, mate. Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to go. So it's been.
Yeah, go on, mate. No, you so much. You're only going to stay for 10 minutes. You've been here 2 hours.
I know. But no, thank you for the opportunities this season and being a part of this. And yeah, it's been wonderful. And thank you to everyone in the chat. And Sean said it well. I mean, he said, yeah, you don't always have to agree. And as long as it's civil and there's no kind of animosity or toxicity between the fans, then that's the main thing. We're all different. We all have our own opinions, and as long as we can discuss it sensibly and amicably, then that's the main thing. That's what it's all about. So
exactly, that's what I've always wanted to try and do. And some people don't seem to want to do that sometimes, do they? I suppose. But
take it too far. They take it too far.
Yeah, they do. And at the end of the day, if we all agreed about everything, life would be really boring, wouldn't it?
Very boring.
And I wouldn't like that anyway. So I kind of I enjoy that people disagree, and that's fine. Let's discuss it, and that's fine. And it may turn out that I'm wrong, and that's great. I'd like to be wrong about Arteta, because it means we'll do well. If I'm wrong about Arteta, it means we're doing well, and I want to be wrong. But I just don't think I'm going to be, unfortunately. At this moment, I don't believe I'm going to be wrong, but time will tell. And if he turns it around, and if he becomes successful, wins us all these massive trophies that we want, then we'll love Arteta forever.
Absolutely.
I'll be quite happy to come on here and hold my hands up and say I was wrong. I'm sorry, Arteta, I got it wrong.
And you will sing the song. And you will sing the song.
Well, I don't know about that. I might be.
Anyway, right, guys, thank you so much.
Cheers, Neil. It's been a pleasure as always.
Rich, and see you soon, hopefully. All right.
Yeah, definitely will. Take it easy, mate. Yeah, take it easy.
Bye.
Neil there, brilliant. Of course, we love Neil on the channel. He's he come on for 10 minutes and he was here for 2 hours. That's what we like. He just loves it there. Terry says, Jesus says he wants Champions League football. Well, he can get us in the Champions League next season, can't he? So he can do that. That should be his job, actually. Terry also says there, why do Arsenal players always get long-term injuries? That is a question I do not know. We've got different medical people now, so I don't really know. Should this still be an issue? I'm not sure. Stephen says there, Sanchez would have been great to have around these youngsters. He would have shown them an elite winning mentality. No, exactly, he would have done, yeah. And he did have that, didn't he? Sanchez was just, he wasn't always, again, a bit like Ozil to a degree. He wasn't always the easiest character probably to deal with, but what a player. And he did have that attitude, a winning attitude. Sean says there, I love Kevin De Bruyne. I think we all love Kevin De Bruyne. What a player he is. He says, I've been Arsenal since 1975. Remember watching Julie Armstrong and co. Wow, fantastic. I'm a sports fan first and enjoy the journey of a team growing. I do not want instant oil success. No, I don't. And I wouldn't want us to go down that route of just getting owners in and just buying the success. And I think Arsenal have always been different from that. To me, Arsenal have always done things in the right way. And I don't necessarily want instant success. I mean, I definitely don't want instant success, because we're here now all this time without really having a lot of success. 18 years since we last won the Premier League. And I don't mind the journey, and I don't mind a growth if I can see the direction and the progress, and you can clearly see what's happening. My worry is, and I've said this previously as well as tonight as well, is the owners, the direction that the owners want to take the club in. That isn't the direction that I am happy with personally for me. Now, again, I'm happy to be proved wrong if they start investing in some serious players and we do start getting that in. I'm just not convinced that we will. And I liked what George Graham did when he came in. He took his time, assessed for the first year, realised he needed a striker, bought Alan Smith. He knew he needed a new defence, so he got in Winterburn and Dixon and Steve Bold, and he built the team around some of the great young players that we had, Rocastle and Thomas and Tony Adams, of course, and all them players. Paul Merson, and I like the way he built that team, and that was brilliant. Unfortunately, he didn't rebuild it when he needed to after sort of 90, 91, where he kind of, replaced all our flair players with battlers in midfield, and it kind of changed the whole dynamic of the team. But I like the way he built that team, and then obviously we had Arsene Wenger, who again built his own team, didn't he? He kept the best of what he had, and he built it around Patrick Vieira and then Thierry Henry and all those other great players that he brought in, and Dennis Bergkamp was already there, and he built around them, didn't he? And I've enjoyed those processes because you can see a clear pathway, you can see a clear direction that the club are going in. And a lot of that was driven by David Dein. And as we mentioned earlier, since David Dein's gone, the club haven't had that direction. And it's almost like the club are settling for fourth or fifth or sixth. Well, they used to settle for fourth. Now they seem to be settling for fifth and sixth, just being in Europe. And that to me is what, for me, Arsenal are. You've been since '75. That outdates me. I was only 7 years old in '75. I didn't go to my first game until '81. So, and for me, Arsenal are more than what we are at the minute. We should be trying to strive to be more than that. And I'm not saying I expect us to win trophies tomorrow or next season or whenever. I just want to see us trying to compete again. And for most of my life watching Arsenal, we've, apart from the first few years when we were muddling along like we are now, we've generally tried to compete with the top teams. We took that mantle off Liverpool. We then competed with Manchester United, that great Manchester United under Fergie for years, won the most league titles. We were competing with them. We didn't always beat them, but we were always competing with them. And, I just want us to look as though we want to try to compete with Liverpool. I don't go along with, oh, it's impossible. We can't compete with them. We can't. Well, why can't we? Why can't we? If we invest properly, if we employ the right people, we can start going along that route. And that's what I want to see us do. Yes, we can't compete with them now. We can't compete with them next year or the year after, although they are going to eventually drop their levels because that happens. Pep will leave, Klopp will probably leave eventually, and teams go in cycles anyway. And the great Arsene Wenger teams, we thought the Invincibles would last forever. They didn't, and soon Chelsea caught us up, another club, Man United caught us up again, and all this and the other. So I believe that Liverpool and Man City will drop their level, and I want us to be the team that's got the ambition to be the team to challenge them at that point. And we don't look as though we've got that ambition as a club, and that's not Arteta's fault. No, it's not, and I'm not blaming him for that. I blame him for lots of other things, as I've said, but not maybe for that. As Loki says there, we're getting further behind. At the moment, we are 100%. We're getting further behind. Sean says there, thanks for your input, Neil. Yeah, no, Neil's a legend. Terry says, night, Neil. Sean says there, the Brazilian at Leeds could be a good signing, but lost his head recently. He's the one, you see. Again, a bit like Richarlison. Whether it's these Brazilians, I'm not sure, but he's a great player, isn't he? Rafinha, isn't it? And he would be a great player for Arsenal, great signing. But again, he's got that attitude or mentality that I can't see Arteta going along with that. He's got this very clear plan of what he wants, the sort of players that he wants. He wants nice players who are going to do as they're told. And he doesn't want players that are going to think outside the box. He wants everybody to be very structured. And Richarlison isn't going to fit in with that. Rafinha's not going to fit in with that. Aubameyang didn't fit in with that. Ozil didn't fit in with that. Guendouzi didn't fit in with that. All these players that have gone. So the players that we sign, if Arteta's really the influence on who we sign, they're going to be players that are going to fit into that structure because he's a very structured coach. And that's his players would need to fit in with that. And that's, I think, he's going to ultimately hold us back. Loki says, my first game was Panathinaikos in '81. I was 10. Mine was that same season, actually. I think it was before Panathinaikos. It was Man City that same season anyway. No. I think Panathinaikos was just before. Then I went to the Man City. It was my first game, and then it was a Winterslag game. When we won, but got knocked out. That was the first time I'd seen Arsenal sort of lose. Although we won, but we got knocked out. That was a strange a strange night. The Panathinaikos one was before. I think Brian Talbot scored in that game, didn't he? But it was just before my first game, about a week or so before. Dean says, "I agree, Sean, but he has to show he's learning quickly from mistakes." Yeah, exactly. He doesn't seem to have done, has he? 2.5 years in, has he learned too much? Sean says, "Yeah, my first game, 75. We were crap in that period. Yeah, we were. But hey ho." I could go home and play with my lace-up football. No, exactly. See, this was a thing, right? And I know, and I said this last week, that when I first started going to Arsenal, early 80s, we weren't very good. We were finishing 5th, 6th, 7th in the table, round about there. We weren't doing much in the cups. We never looked like winning anything. And I used to look at Liverpool and all the success they were having. I used to think, well, wouldn't it be great if Arsenal could actually be that good and win some trophies? It was almost like a dream. I never ever thought I'd see Arsenal be any good ever. So when George Graham rocked up in '86 and took us to Wembley and beat Liverpool in the League Cup, that was the most amazing moment ever. And then, of course, 2 years later, we know what happened. In fact, the anniversary is tomorrow, isn't it, of that great night at Anfield. Never ever thought I'd ever see us win the league, and to see it at Anfield against Liverpool, that great team, was just. But once you start experiencing those things, and then we had a period of good success, didn't we? 91, we won the league again. 93, the 2 cups. 94, European success. All them sort of things. And when you've experienced that, it's very difficult to, when you stop experiencing it. At the beginning, I hadn't experienced it before, so I wasn't that bothered. It would have been nice, and I wish that I could experience it. But once you start experiencing it, you expecting is not the right word, but you kind of want it to come back again. You think, there were great scenes, and every year you see teams celebrating and fans celebrating, and you think, we've done it. I remember when that was us, and you want to experience that again. And that's what I want, because I've experienced it before. It makes it more difficult not to. And some of these younger fans now that have maybe started going in the last 10 years or 5 years, a bit like when I started, they haven't really experienced that much, so they're enjoying it. They're loving it, right? Because it's great. I can remember loving us being crap when in the 80s. I did. It was fantastic, and I understand what they're going through. But it doesn't mean that because we've got different ideas and because we've seen all those different things, that we can't be as easily accepting of this mediocrity that we've suffered for the last few years now. And that's where I am with it. And I can understand why the younger generation don't understand it, because they haven't experienced those things. That they didn't experience the Invincible team. They didn't experience the 91 team or the 89 experience or all those things in between. So of course, what they see now, this season, almost getting in the top 4 would have probably seemed great to them. And I understand that. But it doesn't mean I have to think it was great, because to me, it's not great, because I've known Arsenal to be better than that. And yes, things go in cycles, and I don't expect it all the time, but that's just how I feel, because I believe Arsenal are more than that and better than that, and should be striving to become better than that again. And they don't seem as though we are, because we've been treading water for such a long, long time. Dean says I was 10 when we won the title at Anfield. So you must remember it then to a certain degree. You're old enough to remember it, which is great. Loki says since World War II, we always I've had periods of 18, 19 years between titles. No, 18 years is the longest we've gone since 1929, which was before we first won the league in 1930. Since 1930, we haven't gone more than 18 years. It is now 18 years. So unless we win the league next year, no, it's 18 years this year. Yeah. So we've now gone the longest period without winning the league since 1930. So and I'm not saying, I don't expect us to win the league, because we've never dominated an era, really, have we? We've had spells of success constantly throughout the last 90 years, but we haven't really dominated an era in the way that Liverpool have or Man United have, and I don't expect that we ever will. But you do expect us to challenge regularly for stuff. That's my expectation of Arsenal, to be, after 4 or 5 years, you'd expect us to start challenging again, and we haven't gone through those cycles. We've just gone on a downward spiral for 10 years or more now, and it's getting to the point now where I've had enough of that. I want us to start being serious again. And if these owners aren't going to do it, get out and get someone in who wants us to be successful. Where's the next David Dein? I remember when David Dein joined the board, 83, and we bought Charlie Nicholas that summer, and it was an exciting time because you knew something was going to happen. It took a few years, and we did get there, but now it's like every year's the same, and I can't get excited at the minute while these owners are there, because I know their ambition doesn't match mine for what I see the club as. And unfortunately, unless they prove me wrong this summer and we do buy 4 or 5 really top players, but unless we do that, unfortunately, I will not have that same belief. Sean says that George was well before '86. I'm honestly not bothered about Champions League. Some fans support non-league. No team has a right over any other team. Let's just enjoy the football. No, I agree. I'm not saying anybody does have a right, but ultimately, when you're a club like Arsenal, and when you've got the history that Arsenal have got, then as a club, we should be aiming higher because of the history that we've got. You know, if you're a Watford or if you're a club like that, then that's fine, you know. And I'm sure Watford fans and Burnley fans are disappointed they've been relegated. Of course they are. But ultimately, their expectations as a club and as a fan base are different to ours because we're Arsenal. And as I think it was Kyle pointed out before, we're the third biggest club in England. We are. And that's a fact. So we should have that ambition as a club. And as fans, we should not expect it, but we should want that for the club. You know, and that's all I want. Do you know what I mean? Loki says there, I had the Nicholas wedge hair. I did actually. I know it seems hard to believe now, but it's all gone. But I did have the wedge haircut, and I had it permed at the back as well. Actually, back in the '80s when I did have hair. But they were good days actually. And even though we were crap then, and we were terrible, right? And you know, we didn't ever win anything. We never looked like winning anything. But it was a laugh. But that's because I hadn't experienced anything else. As soon as we started winning things, your whole expectations change, your whole mindset changes. And I mean, me and Neil were talking on the show a few weeks ago that, you know, the Invincible team, for example, did we really appreciate that as much as we should have done? Because of it was almost expected to a degree. It wasn't expected to be that good, but we almost sort of took it for granted how good we were. And now, obviously, we haven't won the league since then. I wish I'd appreciated that more. And obviously, if we did win the league now in the future, I would really appreciate it because I know it might never happen again. And I hope the Leicester fans, when they won the league, I hope they appreciated it. Even the Man City fans at the weekend, right? And I don't particularly like Man City, but I hope they appreciated that because that could be their last title for 20 years. You don't know, dear. Unfortunately, when Liverpool won the league, their fans couldn't enjoy it because they wasn't allowed in the stadium. So, but you need to enjoy those moments because they're quite rare, aren't they? You know. Shaw's been going since 1975. All those games, all those years. How many of those years have been really great? Not that many. So they are rare, really, aren't they? And you know, no matter how lucky we've been to have experienced them all, we need to appreciate when they do come around. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't stop having that ambition for the club because we're not a Watford or we're not a club like that, are we? A Norwich or stuff like that. We're a club that should be aiming for more and we should be aiming to be successful, and we haven't done that for a long time, and it's a long way back now, unfortunately. Terry says, when you're growing up watching Arsenal being crap, but once you've tasted success, you weren't expecting. Well, yeah, you do. Yeah, it goes back to that song, doesn't it? The James song. If I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor, and that sums it up. Once you've seen great things, it's more difficult to accept mediocrity afterwards, isn't it? And it's the same with anything, isn't it? You know, if you win the lottery and you win £1 million, and then like that guy did, and then you waste it all on shit, and then in 5 years' time you've got no money, it's going to be more difficult. Even if you're back to where you started from, you're going to find it a lot more difficult because you've experienced all of that great stuff in between. And it's the same, isn't it? That's how I feel a little bit with Arsenal to a certain degree. Sean says Charlie would have been too lazy for modern football. Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, he was lazy at the time, wasn't he? I mean, George Graham soon kicked him out, didn't he, for that same reason, because he was lazy, but he did provide some great moments, didn't he? You know, I suppose he's a bit like the 1980s Mesut Ozil in a sense, isn't he? He had some great moments. But ultimately, yeah, he was lazy, and he'd rather have been in nightclubs in London, wouldn't he? With, you know, he was our version of George Best, really, wasn't he? I suppose at the time. I guess that's probably how he was. And Dean says, I remember every moment of the title at Anfield. Yeah, I mean, anyone that was around then will. So it's the anniversary tomorrow, isn't it? Actually, of that amazing night. The greatest night ever, I think, in English football history, let alone Arsenal's history. There won't be another game like that ever. And if there is, it certainly won't have that finish, will it, that game had? You know, last minute goal, the two teams that were fighting for the league, we needed to win by 2 goals to stop them winning the league at their ground, and to do it in the last minute, you know, they made a film about it. That's how good it was. They didn't make a film about Aguero, did they? Let's be honest. They didn't make a film about anything else like that. They made a film about that moment because it's the greatest moment ever in football history. Probably in world football history, but certainly in British football history. Nothing's ever going to top that, is it ever? And it involved our team, and we came out on top. I mean, fantastic. I mean, it will never get better than that, will it? It will never get better than that. I can remember going to a game once. This was when Arsene Wenger was manager. Can't remember which game it was now. It was an away game. It was when we was at the peak of our powers, and we were brilliant that day. It might have been Man United. It might have been the night we won the league at Old Trafford, actually. But anyway, it was an amazing night. And I remember coming out of the ground that night, thinking to myself, I don't think I'm ever going to enjoy watching a team as much as I've just enjoyed that game. And if I'm honest, every game since then, for 20 odd years, has maybe been slightly disappointing because it's never reached those heights. I can't remember which game it was now, but I just remember feeling that coming out of the ground that night, thinking it's never going to get better than that. It is never going to. Loki says, my favourite game of all time, 2-1 away. The semi-final. Yeah, that was an unbelievable night, wasn't it? That was actually probably my first big night watching Arsenal, the excitement of feeling like we might be doing something. Because I say up until then, I've been going 5 or 6 years, we've been plodding along doing nothing. Suddenly George came along. And that night at Tottenham, that semi-final replay, that was the moment. That was the moment for me where I'd experienced something amazing for the first time, and that was incredible, actually. And then obviously at Wembley as well, when we won the final, those sort of moments. Obviously then Anfield '89, and after that things change. They change you, because you then start to. It's not the same excitement again, is it? Nothing will top that at that night at White Hart Lane. You're right, but again, I didn't think of it like that at the time. It was just so amazing, and you're not expecting it to happen again. So it's just a one-off, isn't it? And then suddenly you win the final, and you think, oh, this is nice. Then you're winning the league at Anfield, and you think, wow, nothing can top that. And then you're winning the league again, and then you're winning cup finals again, and then it goes on like that, doesn't it? It does. And in a way, I sometimes wish we hadn't been so successful, because then the tiniest little bits of success, like winning that White Hart Lane that night, would feel so much better. Now, if we did that, well, maybe now it'd be different, because we haven't been competitive for a long time. But I don't know, 5 years ago, winning a game like that, you wouldn't have that same excitement. I wouldn't, as I did in '87, because you've experienced those moments so many times over time, haven't you? It's not the first time. The first time's always sticks with you the best, doesn't it? And that's why that semi-final, the final against Liverpool, and then '89, the first trophy, the first league title, all those things, they just stay with you forever. But it does change. It does change the way you see it afterwards. James, I understand wanting to be competitive, but we won't compete with the oil. We have to understand we are where we are, and cut our coffin expectations. No, you're right, and I don't disagree with you there, and you're 100% spot on. And we can't really compete with that. What needs to happen is there need to be rules in place to stop that from happening. So these clubs can't just dominate football like that. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. And the fact that it is, you're right. Technically, we can't compete with that. But Liverpool they haven't got oil money, have they? They've got American owners like we have, or they certainly did. I don't know if did they sell the club to American owners. But anyway, Liverpool have done it, so it's possible you can compete with that oil money. I mean, look at Chelsea. They've been funded by Abramovich, and although they've won a lot of trophies, they've not been competitive in the Premier League as much in recent years, have they? Like Liverpool have overtaken them, so it's possible to do it. We need to have the right plan in place, but I don't think our plan's even about that. They've not even considered that as something they want to do, and that's where the issues are for me. Sean says, where are we? Sorry. Were you at Liverpool final when Charlie scored? Yeah, I was at that one. That was the first time I'd ever seen us win a trophy live. I remember watching the '79 FA Cup final at home when I think I was 10 then. So yeah, the final when Charlie scored was the first time I'd actually seen us win a trophy in the stadium. Unbelievable. What an unbelievable day that was. Just the best day ever at the time, because I say the first time you experience something like that, it's incredible. And it never quite feels the same afterwards, is it? The second time, the third time you win it, you don't take it for granted as such, but you sort of do in a way. It's not quite that same excitement level, is it? Sean says that Arsenal should play the game on their websites. Well, they should, yeah, kick off and say, was it 10? It kicks off late, did it 8:10 or something? They should do it as it was live. That'd be brilliant. We'd all be watching it, wouldn't we? Let's be honest. Again, I mean, I've watched that game 100 times, and even now, every time you see that, and you see Michael Thomas when Alan Smith flicks that ball on and it falls to Thomas, every time I think he's going to get tackled. And I still can't believe that happened. Looking at it now, you at the time you think shoot, and he waited and waited, and every time you look at it back, you think he's going to get tackled. He's going to get tackled, and we're not going to do it. And even he scores, you still look at it, you think he's going to get tackled. Why didn't he shoot earlier? It's just the way, isn't it? But yeah, that was just an incredible moment. And yeah, they should play it on the website tomorrow. You're right, and they should play it at 8:10, and we should all sit and watch it as though it's live and experience it again, as I've done many times before. In fact, I used to watch that. The video of the game on the 26th of May every year. Actually, I did it for about 15 years afterwards, and then I think recently I've been watching an '89 documentary on the 26th of May. I'll probably do that tomorrow actually, but that's been a ritual really over the years. Dean says there Liverpool was a team to beat, and yeah, they were, as they are now, but they were then as well, and we did it. I know it was different then, the money and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, we knocked them off their perch, didn't we? Sean says I was at that game, Spurs game too. It was so emotional. It was amazing, incredible. And the fact that it was Rocastle, of course, I got that goal, made it even better, didn't it? Dean said, got to go. Catch you guys later, my Greenwood family. Yeah, cheers, Dean, for watching again, mate. Really appreciate your support. We will speak very, very soon. I'm sure there'll be loads of stuff going on over the summer on the channel. We will speak to you soon. Sean says, were you at Anfield? Indeed, I was, along with, was there 3,000 others? Incredible stuff. Sean says there need a draft type system. Yeah, no, that would be good actually. Someone else mentioned that recently. Who was it said that? I saw that somewhere else actually. That's a good idea. Even playing field, isn't it? They won't do it though. It's too much money. I want to, Neil says there, Anfield '89 was for me the greatest moment. Of course it was. It's the greatest moment ever in history of football. It's simple. That's it. There's nothing will ever beat it. Nothing can ever beat it. And the fact it was us. And I'd go back to '89. It was just great, wasn't it? It was the hottest summer ever, wasn't it? '89. I was 20. It was my 21st birthday. The month after we won the league there, so it was a great year actually for me. So yeah, it was brilliant. My first child was born during that season as well. So yeah, I'd go back to them days. If they invented a time machine, I would go back to them. '89, definitely experience that again. Brilliant stuff. Sean says there, Liverpool have great scouts. Arsenal scouts never find diamonds. No, they don't, because they're not looking for them, are they? They're looking for the cheap options, I think. Neil says, they're a great point, Rich. We experience those great moments, so we miss it. And what exactly? Yeah, if you don't have it, you don't miss it. Exactly. That's exactly the point, isn't it? It's exactly the point. And yeah, that's how I feel. And the longer it goes on, the worse it gets almost, isn't it? Because you miss it even more. Neil says, yeah, sorry, just catching up. No worries at all. Loki says they spent 2 weeks on the beer after Anfield. Did you? Good. I mean, I was 21, well, a month afterwards. So it was a good time. Definitely a good time. The music was good. The fashion was good. The football was good. Everything was good, wasn't it? We were young, enjoying life. So yeah, brilliant. Sean says, we were so blessed. But yeah, exactly. The '89, it was a blessing. There's no doubt about that. And as I said, when you've experienced those things, you know what football can bring you, how much joy and how much emotion it can bring you, right? And I think personally, for me, probably since that Tottenham game in '87 to a certain degree, you're almost chasing it, aren't you? If you could put in a bottle that feeling, if you could turn it into a drug that you could take to make you feel the way that Anfield '89 made us feel, or that White Hart Lane in '87, or Wembley in '87, or Copenhagen '94, all those great moments, right? If you could actually, the feeling that gives you, if you could actually make that into some sort of drug, you'd be a billionaire within weeks, because that's what everybody want. You want to feel like that, and no drugs, artificial drugs, can bring that same feeling on as what those moments can. It's impossible, and they're what you constantly chase, aren't they? And it's like anything, isn't it? I suppose you maybe you go cold turkey in a way, don't you? When you don't experience it for a long time. I've so much over the weekend watching these scenes at the Etihad, seeing those scenes at Everton when they stayed up, and I know that's a different situation, and obviously even at Anfield when they were could have won the league. And I remember when we had it in '99 when we had to beat Aston Villa and Man U were playing Spurs, and we needed them to drop points, and Spurs were winning, and we were all excited. And then all those moments. You want to be a part of that. You see other people being a part of it, and you look at it, you think, why can't that be us? Again, because we know how great it feels. And I don't know, that maybe that's just me. Sean said here, when Mickey scored, I leapt up and smashed the ceiling light in my Liverpool mate. Oh, he was in a Liverpool mate's house. That's even better. Wow, that's a great story. But yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Those moments, you just never get them in any other part of your life. You don't. It's impossible. You can't recreate that because it's life. The thing about live sport is it's not scripted. So nothing else that you do in your life, whatever, you can't beat that because it isn't scripted. It's that high, and I don't know. It's difficult to describe it, isn't it? But that's what you chase in your life, don't you? Constantly, everybody does. Some people will turn to drink, they'll turn to drug, whatever it is, just to give them that feeling, those feelings of to blot out all the bad stuff and just to experience some good feelings for a short period of time. And that's what, for me, it's always been live sports done that, football's done that for me. It's that because you can't get it, and I've never been able to get it any other way. I don't drink, I don't take drugs or anything like that. So that's been my high. And when it's denied me because Arsenal have been so terrible not terrible, but so average for so long, it gets frustrating, and you want to experience that. And the only way I know I can experience it is for Arsenal to be challenging, winning those things. Yeah, the FA Cup wins recently have been good. 2014 in particular was a great moment, but they're the sort of things that you want to be happening again as you've experienced them before. Neil says, not just you, Rich, you're spot on. Loki says, better than sex for 85 minutes longer. That's probably one way of looking at it. But again, it's a different high, isn't it? It's a different high. Sean says there, Rich, when I comment on other channels, people like Dan Potts, and not just him, comment, I'm not an Arsenal fan. Thanks for yours and Neil's mature interaction. Listen, mate, I mean, what I've always wanted to try and do, and I like Dan Potts, by the way. I think he's great. But I like speaking to other Arsenal fans, and everybody's got their own experiences of Arsenal, and everybody's got their own experiences of football, and everybody's got their own expectations of what they want out of it and what they enjoy and all this kind of stuff, and that's great. And I'm more than happy to interact with anybody. I have fans of different clubs on the channel because football fans, we're all the same, let's be honest. Ultimately, whatever club we support, generally we want the same things. We want our club to do well, we want our team to win games, and we want to hopefully win some trophies, and we want to do all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, I think I've got maybe my experience in life, experience of going to football. I love interacting with football fans. That's one of the reasons why I set the channel up, because that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk about my club that has been a massive part of my life for 40 odd years, and also as well to be able to interact and speak to other people, not only Arsenal fans, of course. I've met some great Arsenal fans doing the channel, that come on the channel here, people that I've met at games from being on the channel and stuff like that. And to me, that's what I wanted to set the channel out for. And I'm not really bothered about anything else. If there'll be people out there that don't like what I do, and that's fine. I'm not bothered. I'm just glad that I've been able to reach out to other Arsenal fans, been able to build a little community of great Arsenal fans. We have some great fun. We talk about the club that we love. What better way can you spend your time, than doing stuff like that? Do you know what I mean? It's the best thing ever, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's not much that can give you that sort of satisfaction, really. Neil says there, top man Sean, and likewise, much love indeed. Terry says, Sean, it's good to have you here, mate. You'll always be welcome. Yeah, of course, because and I think that I say I do like Dan Potts, and I don't want I don't really like people criticising, because I know him personally, and he's a great guy. And I know some channels have got different ideas and they want to do different things, and that's fine. I've got no problem with any of that. You know, but I say I'm just about. I just want to chat to Arsenal fans and football fans and talk about the club that we love. That's what I want to do. And you know, tonight I've never really done a kind of a phone-in show, if you like, when I put the link on and got anyone to come on, and you know, not many people came on, but Kyle came on, not interacted with him before. Actually, he did mention about his channel. I forgot about that earlier. We was involved in some conversation. I'll get that back up because he was a great guy, actually. You know, strong opinions, and that's great. You know, I agree with a lot of what he said. Other things maybe not so much, but that's fine. I'm trying to find where his channel was. He wanted us to give it a plug, and he was a great guy, and I enjoyed him on the channel. I'll definitely be trying to get him back on again at some point. Let me just find that. I think quite a lot of comments came in. There was a lot we were talking at the time, and I think I missed a few. Oh, there it is. There. He says, there you go. Kyle says, sorry, Richard. Could you just give my channel a shout out? Kyle Walsh Gunner. There you go. So yeah, Kyle Walsh Gunner. Definitely go and check him out over on YouTube. I'm sure. You know, he's certainly got some interesting comments he made, didn't he? So, you know, and I say I agree with a lot of what he said. And that's great. So I'll definitely be looking out for him a little bit more as well. Sean says there, I like Dan Potts too. Just do not agree with his autopilot agenda to get Arteta out on it. No, I mean, I've had Dan Potts on my channel a few times, and he is against. You know, I know his feelings on Arteta, and that's fine. And again, I agree with a lot of what he says as well. I really do. And I must admit, I'm more. My feeling is all about Arsenal, and I don't really care about the manager particularly. If they're doing well, brilliant. You know, that's the best thing. If they're not doing well, get rid of them, get someone else in. That's how I look at it. I don't get attached really to managers that aren't successful, because I care about Arsenal, and I care about enjoying what I'm watching. I haven't really enjoyed watching Arsenal play much for the last sort of 4 or 5 years, if I'm honest. Towards the end of Wenger, obviously Emery's time wasn't great, and I've not really enjoyed the Arteta years so far, particularly. There's been the odd good moments here and there, but overall I've not really enjoyed. And that's what it's about, isn't it? You've got to enjoy what you're watching, and you've got to see some sort of plan to make us competitive. That's what I like anyway. But anyway, we'll see. Sean says, thanks, Terry. Gooner 70s Neil actually was on the show. And Sean says, the Irish fella was good. No, he was very good and entertaining. And, you know, I don't necessarily have to agree with people. I mean, I did agree with a lot of what he said, to be fair. He made a lot of sense. But I don't have to agree with people to enjoy listening to them. If they're talking about Arsenal, I'll listen to them. And if I disagree, I'll disagree. If I agree, I agree. It's great. So, yeah, he was great. And Kyle, and I'll definitely be. I've not had any interaction with him before. I don't even think he's been in the chat on the channel. He may have watched us before, but I'm definitely going to be watching his channel, and I'm definitely going to be subscribing. So yeah, please, all you guys do so as well, because he was entertaining and he made some good points, and he's a big Arsenal fan. That's what we like. And you know, when he comes to a game, it's a massive day out for him, isn't it? So you know, you got to give him respect for that. Sean says, I really hope Arteta gets us another trophy. Well, I do, because that's what we want. I want to see Arsenal winning trophies. I want to see us competing for trophies. The Europa League next year could be interesting, couldn't it? We wasn't too far off last year. Loki says, me and my brother argue all the time. When Mr. Wenger was here, we would argue on the train back. Yeah, exactly. But that's what it's about, isn't it? You know, even when even in the Invincible season, even when we were brilliant, we'd still have arguments about different things. Why did Wenger take Pires off? You know, why did he take Thierry Henry off? Why did this happen? You know, there's always things, isn't it? It's just on a different scale, isn't it? You know, and that's the beauty of being a football fan, isn't it? You know, we all want the same things, but maybe we've got different ideas of how we want to get to them, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Sean said, what's his channel again? It was Kyle. Was it Kyle Walsh Gunner or something? I'll find it again. Here we go. It is, yeah, Kyle Walsh Gunner. On YouTube it'll be. So yeah, Kyle Walsh Gunner. So put that in, and definitely subscribe to his channel, because I will be listening to a lot more of his content, because it looks like it could be quite interesting. I had Del Boy Gunner on, actually. He's another Irish Arsenal fan. He's got a channel as well called Del Boy Gunner TV, I think it is. and he's an interesting guy as well. He's got some similar opinions actually, and he puts them across really well. And that's what I like. You know, I don't mind if someone agrees with me or disagrees with me, or I agree or disagree, whatever. If they can put their points across well, I'll listen and I'll take it on board, and I may agree or I may not agree. But ultimately, that's what it's all about, isn't it? And I kind of like that. So, but yeah, that's what football is, isn't it? Football's about opinions. Football's about, you know, and if we're all Arsenal fans, ultimately, what we all want, whether you're big Arteta in or Arteta out, I don't like all them labels actually, but that's what people are known as. To me, what we all want is one thing: we all want Arsenal to be the best that we can be, and ultimately, sometimes we need to put aside some of these little petty arguments and just understand that if I don't think Arteta's the right man to take us forward and you do, that's fine. And as there, obviously, when I was at Newcastle the other week, supported the team for pretty much 85 minutes until the second goal went in, and then my frustration got the better of me. But that happens, and that's what I'll always do. And if we start to become successful, then it'll be brilliant. And I'll be quite happy to be wrong, and I'll quite happily come on a channel. I'll get you on the channel, surely, if you want. We'll say, you know, you were right about Arteta, and I should have listened to it, and I should have backed him more. And if I'm so happen to be wrong and he gets sacked, as all managers probably end up doing anyway, the next manager coming and we'll have to decide about him. And if we go in a good direction, I'll be happy. And if we don't, then I'll think, is he the right man? And that's what it is. Sean says it's hard to get your point across well in the chat. No, it is. I agree with that. Yeah, and that's why what I'm going to start doing a lot more is I'm going to start opening the channel up more to people, so people actually come on, you know, and whether they agree with me, whether they agree with other people on the show or not, that's fine. And I want everyone to have the opportunity to put their points across, because nobody's right and nobody's wrong. Let's be honest. Really, we've just got an opinion that, you know, we believe this or we believe that or we think this and we think that, which is great. But nobody's necessarily right or wrong. You know, you could say finishing fifth this season made it a good season, right? And you wouldn't be necessarily wrong to think that. You think that, and that's fine. Personally, for me, I don't think it is a good season, but that's my feeling on it. That doesn't make me right or wrong. It doesn't make you right or wrong. It's just we just have a different opinion because maybe we look at it in a different way. You know, and that's fine, and that's great. You know, I can remember before social media, all this kind of stuff. You'd go down a pub, wouldn't you? You'd chat to your mates afterwards, and you know, you'd have arguments, you'd fall out about this, that, and the other, wouldn't you? And it's the same now, isn't it? We all want the same for the club, but we just got different views and different ways to look at it and different ways to see it, and that's basically what it's about, isn't it? And Neil says, thanks for having me on, Rich. Massive honour as always, and thanks everyone in the chat. No, thanks for coming on, mate. As always, it's brilliant to chat to you. You know, I think me and you interact pretty well on the channel. Actually, we've been on before, so you know, you're always welcome anytime. You know that. Terry says it's a two-faced thing being a football fan, never happy. No, of course you're not happy. No one's happy, are they? Unless you're winning every week, which no one is. Neil says it's a great channel and you deserve more coverage. Well, thanks, mate. I mean, you know, I just do what I do. If people like it, they like it, don't they? I enjoy doing it, which is the main thing. But no, you're right. You guys in the chat make the show what it is. People that come on the channel make the show what it is. You know, Kyle tonight, brilliant. First time he's been on. You know, people like that. That's what makes it. That's why I set it up. That's what I wanted to do. And the fact that it's been growing as well is even better, isn't it? I've actually just realised I've been going for 3 hours, which is longer than I anticipated to be going. But it's been great. It's been some great. I say there's some great people on. Obviously, Adam earlier on, Neil, who spent a lot longer on than he intended to. Kyle as well. It's great to have him on, and obviously all you guys in the chat as well. So some new people as well. So Sean, I've not seen you in the chat before. So if it is your first time on the channel, please consider subscribing if you've enjoyed it. Obviously, some usuals have been in locally, of course. Terry, as always. I love you guys. As always, Dean as well was in earlier. I know he had to shoot off. There's been a few people in tonight. Actually, it's been great, and you know, maybe in the future more people will want to come on as well and actually chat live on the air with us as well, which would be nice. And if you do, if anybody in the chat fancies coming on at any time, just drop me a message on Twitter. You can either put it on the channel Twitter, which is, as you can see, at Over and Arsenal, or my personal Twitter, which is at GoonerRichB. And yeah, if you want to come on, I'm more than welcome you to come on. Actually, everyone's welcome if you fancy it, and we can organise something. So that's always good. Sean says, I'm not saying Arteta and his backing will get us top 2 finish. I'm saying I enjoy and understand how difficult a job it is for the manager, and genuinely happy. No, that's great, and you know, lots of people are happy with the progress. And so far, I'm a little bit underwhelmed, if I'm totally honest. But that's just me. And we'll see what happens. Next season's big, isn't it? I think if next season we do struggle with Europe, if we do struggle to get in the top 6, then I think Arteta's days are numbered. If next season with Europa League, if we win the Europa League, get in the Champions League, brilliant. And if we do pretty decent in the league, then to me, that's great. And I'll be, he will deserve another season or 2 seasons, whatever it is. That'd be great. But next season's crucial, isn't it? Because we need to have another season where we're at least challenging for that top 4 with a European campaign as well. Do well in Europe, maybe one of the domestic cups as well and stuff like that. That's what we need to be for Arsenal. That's going to be progress now, because finishing 6th next year isn't progress, is it? Even if finishing 5th next year is not really progress, is it? We need to lose less than 13 games, maybe lose 10, less than 10. That's progress, and that's what I want to see, and that's fine. You know what I mean? That's great. Loki says, cheers, Richard. Cheers to Up the Gunners, indeed. Thanks again. Sean says, thanks for the show tonight. No, thank you very much for your comments, mate. Thanks for sticking with us. Enjoyed your company. Terry says, great show again, Richard. Take care. Guna 70, Sean, let's see, Loki. Great. Yeah, it's been good. I've enjoyed it. So that's it then. That sort of, maybe we didn't review the season so much, more just about football in general, which is great. Arsenal in general, which is great. I've enjoyed it, actually. Maybe it wasn't intended the show, but I didn't really have a plan for tonight's show anyway. It was just a matter of getting people involved, really. Doom Leader 9 says, there's need that we have offered Nketiah 5 years. I knew that we've offered 100 grand a week. Yeah, I've just been hearing that 100 grand a week. Well, I mean, if that's true, why aren't we putting that 100 grand a week into buying an elite striker? Eddie's done okay. Is he an elite striker? No. Is he a striker to take us to that next level? No. If we're giving him 100 grand a week, why on earth aren't we giving 100 grand a week to an elite striker that can come in and take us to that next level? Who knows? Again, club decision, not necessarily Arteta's decision, club decision, owner's decision. That's the problem. Sean says, I agree. If Arteta goes backwards, it's time to change. Exactly. That's what we want to see. We want to see progress in the right way, moving forward every season, progressing, getting closer to the top, or closer to challenging at the top. Yeah, Nuja. I know you meant Nuja. Yeah, I mean, if that's true, well, I was hearing that earlier. I saw it on Twitter before. I mean, crackers anyway. Basically, that's going to draw a curtain under this season, 2021-2022. Yeah, some people think it's been a good season. There's been progress. In some ways, there has been progress. In other ways, not as much progress as we hoped. The goals against has been bad. The defeats has been bad. But, we're back in Europe, back in the Europa League. That's a progress. Let's see what the summer brings. Transfers. Let's see who comes in. Let's see what happens in the summer, and go again next year. We'll still be here, regardless of whether we 100% behind Arteta, whether we don't think he's the right man, whatever it is. We'll still be here supporting the team, supporting the club, and hoping next season's better. That's what we hope every year. Every summer's the same, isn't it? You always go into it with hope that things are going to improve. Let's see what the transfer window brings us. The news so far isn't encouraging for me. Renewing El Neni, giving Eddie 100 grand a week. I mean, and obviously Arteta's already had his renewed. I'm not 100% behind those decisions, but let's hope I'm right, because who knows what's going to happen. Neil says, take care, we'll hope to chat again soon. Yeah, definitely, mate. Doomia9 says that's a second choice wage, not third. Well, there you go. And Neil says top 4 and cup will be progress. Yeah, it would. Neil says it's been a good listen while I'm stuck in at work. Oh, cheers, mate. Thanks for tuning in, Phil. I hope you're well, mate. And Neil says, cheers, Terry. And Sean there, I don't believe they'll pay Eddie 100 grand a week. Maybe if he scored 15 goals plus. Well, 100 grand a week. Wow. I'm flabbergasted when I saw that actually earlier. I don't know if that can be true. But anyway, let's see. If it's true, it's true, isn't it? I mean, fair play to Eddie. He's done well for himself, hasn't he? If he gets that contract, he's certainly not going to leave, is he? And Doomsday Nice says, Europa might be all we need for the moment at this stage we're at now. No, I agree with that, yeah. Maybe a blessing, better than getting stuffed by a 9-0. No, you're right. And I kind of agree. I think the Europa League is where we are at the minute. And I don't think we can expect too much more. And I think that's it. And it does give us a chance. We had no chance of winning the Champions League, let's be honest. We'd have probably struggled to get through the group stage. So being in the Europa League at least gives us an opportunity. We've reached a semi-final twice. We've reached a final twice. It's a level that we're at in terms of Europe, isn't it? So let's hope next year we can have a good run, get to the semi-final, get to the final. Who knows, win it. That would be great, wouldn't it? And I think if we win the Europa League, regardless of where we finished in the league, I would take finishing 8th or 9th in the league if we won the Europa League. Because 1, it gets us in the Champions League, and 2, at least you can sacrifice the league to win something like that. because our European trophy record is poor, isn't it? 2 in our whole history. We need one more at least. So yeah, that's what we need to look at. But yeah, no, I agree. Europa League is where we're at. We've got a reasonable chance of doing well in it, which is what we want. Neil says, Rich, you looking to match Ryan's 24-hour pod? No, I'm not. No. Sean says, is Balogun coming back? I don't know, actually. I've not heard about Balogun. I would probably sell him if I'm honest. If we're offering any of this new contracts, if we're buying 2 new strikers, is he going to get a game? Probably not. So I don't know. Boom Dealer 9 says, thanks for the show, Rich. By the way, my fave game was being in the North Bank behind the goal when Tony Adams scored against Everton. Oh, wow, yes. That's probably my favourite game at Highbury. Winning the league that day in the sunshine, win it in that style as well, 4-0. And that goal, of course, as the commentary went, summed it all up, it did, didn't it? Yeah, that is definitely my greatest game at Highbury, I think. There's been a few good games at Highbury over the years. That is probably my favourite ever Highbury game. Definitely was. That was an amazing day. Never forget our first Premier League title as well, and we got the trophy afterwards, didn't we? Brilliant stuff. Terry says, "Don't forget to like and subscribe." Yes, please. Yeah, please do. Yeah, it'd be great to get you on board for subscribing to the channel. What we'll be doing now is I may have a little break from the channel, just the season's finished, and just have a break for a week or so. We will be covering the Women's Euros. We do love our women's football on this channel, particularly the Arsenal women, but we'll be covering the Women's Euros, so there'll be some shows there. At least, there'll be a few watch-alongs. I'm going to a few games, so I'll be doing some vlogging from there as well. And there'll be some shows on a regular basis throughout the competition. Hopefully England can do well. And then I'm going to also look at doing some different sort of content as well through the summer and into next season as well. Just mix things up a bit. It's been a good season on the channel, actually. It's gone well. A lot of people have started subscribing to us and been joining in, but I'm going to try and expand it a bit next year. Have a few more live shows, a few different things, get some different people involved as well, do some different things. So do please stay with us, because although we might have a week or two off, we will be back bigger and better very soon. Sean says there, Steve Bold assist, missed the game. Oh, you didn't miss that one as well, did you? Oh, you're lucky, mate. I tell you, you missed a couple of good ones there. But that was definitely my favourite game at Highbury, yeah. We celebrated long before Tony scored that goal, because we knew we'd won the league. I think when Overmars, I wasn't convinced until Overmars scored the 3rd goal in the second half when he ran through and slotted that one in. That's when I knew we'd won it. And then, of course, the Adams goal just tops it all off, didn't it? Fantastic stuff. Yeah, brilliant stuff. So thanks to all you guys in the chat. It's been brilliant, actually. I intended to do a show for about an hour, and it's gone on for 3 hours. So that's you've got a bonus, or you might not look at it like that, but anyway, it's been a bonus for me. I really enjoyed it. So thanks everyone for watching. I say, if you haven't done so, please like, share, and subscribe. It is free to subscribe, and we are near 1,000. It'd be nice to get there, wouldn't it? Soon. I'll be back probably in a week or so, maybe 10 days. I will put some stuff on, obviously promoting when we're back with some new content. There will be some new different ideas coming up as well for next year, next season. I say, don't forget the Women's Euros, because that is going to be good. If you like football, you will enjoy the Women's Euros, because it is top quality stuff. It's going to be really, really good. And I'm at the first game, England Austria, Old Trafford. I'll be doing some vlogging from there. I think we're going to Netherlands against Sweden. We've got a semi-final as well. Hopefully it'll be England. It's on England's side of the draw. If we win our group, we'll be England semi-final. So that'll be good. Sean says, I'll stop going in 88. Live up north. Yeah, I live up north now as well. A bit more recent than that, though. Not been up here as long as that. Neil says that. Luca's in there. He says, great video, good stuff. Well, thanks. I'll say thanks to everyone for watching your support. So I'll be back very soon with some new content coming up. And that has been 2021, 2022. So 89, really, you've been up to 89, well. We're talking about 89. Don't forget tomorrow night, the anniversary. If Arsenal aren't showing it on the website, get the video out, get the DVD out, watch that game again. That's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow night, as I always do on the 26th of May. So that's going to be fun. So please watch that as well. We'll enjoy that, won't we, tomorrow? So I'll be back in a week or so with some more content, and then it'll be the Women's Euro starting in July. I'm going to a friendly, actually, England women, against Holland in a friendly on 24th of June. So I'll be doing some vlogging from that as well. But loads of stuff coming up. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will speak to you guys very, very soon. Thanks everyone for watching. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you're new. And in the meantime, as always finish the same way. Come on, you Gunners. Come on, Arsenal. Let's do it. Let's have a better season, eh? Let's let's move on to that next level. Let's win that Europa League. That's what we want, isn't it? Come on, it'd be good to win it. So enjoy it. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the 89 celebrations tomorrow, and get the DVD out. And I'll speak to you very soon. Take it easy, guys. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Be back with you very, very soon. Thanks for your company tonight. I'll speak to you soon. Ta-ra.